Chapter 55 Chapter 55 Hotian Ninth Stage. The attacks of these violent apes left shallow blue bruises on Yi Zaiwen's body. But within a few breaths' time, all of these bruises completely disappeared. Yi Zaiwen's body had become very formidable. Yi Shiwen turned around 180 degrees and gave a solid punch to a violent ape, killing it instantly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bang! Yi Shiwen curled his fingers into a fist and punched out violently, which caused many air explosions. Bang! A loud noise of explosions spread out, and an endless amount of Zhen Qi burst out everywhere in the surrounding. Boom! 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 Clang! With the sound of unsheathing a blade, a foot-long Daoqi emerged from Yi Zaiwen's palm. Pick! Stab! Chop! Cut! Ah! A move after move, Yi Shiwen continued to use the blade skills using his palms instead of his long blade. Each of his moves would kill a violent ape instantly, although these violent apes were at the Hotian Ninth Stage, but they still weren't his match. Yi Shiwen is using a Daoqi in his hands to display his blade skills. Yi Shiwen estimated that their combat strengths should be in between Hotian and Xiantian realms. They were the so-called half-step into Xiantian realm-type demon beasts. Now, Yi Shiwen could have a breakthrough any time, and once he had a breakthrough, then he would be able to easily compete with a Xiantian realm master. The strength of his mortal body had already reached the strength of 99 tigers, that was the peak level for a Hotian realm expert. And if he continued to temper his body with all kinds of external forces, then his strength would finally reach the strength of a dragon. This unceasing massacre by Yi Shiwen had finally angered the violent ape king. It was a huge violent ape with its whole body covered with fiery red hair. There was a grim look on its face, and a pair of bloody red eyes was staring maliciously at Yi Shiwen. The violent ape king punched out its gigantic fist, and each fist produced layer upon layer of fire waves rushing towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen gathered the qi into both his palms and directly shot up in the air, causing a huge air explosion accompanied with a sharp, loud sound. Roar! Violent Ape King fiercely punched into Yi Zaiwen's chest, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, right that moment, he also gave a lightning-fast direct kick on its belly. Dang! It felt as if Yi Shiwen had directly kicked on a steel plate. The violent Ape King only felt a momentary numbness in its body from the terrifying strength present in his kick, and retreated a few steps. This was not the first time he had fought with Violent Ape King. During the first fight, he had nearly died at the hands of Violent Ape King because it was a demon beast that had actually entered half a step into the Xiantian realm. These types of demon beasts were terrifyingly strong and could be compared to a semi-transformed Xiantian master. Yi Shiwen truly felt how overpowering a Xiantian master's strength could be. Although he had beheaded Luo Tian before, but he had already been wounded by Hua Menghan and was extremely weak. Otherwise, on that day, he would have died instead. All this time, Yi Shiwen had just been playing around with this giant ape, training his body externally at the same time. If he was just an ordinary master of peak Hotian Ninth Stage, then he would definitely have died at the hands of these violent apes. However, the tyrant's body technique had showed its terrible power during this training. Although his body looked slim, but it actually contained an explosive power condensed inside it. Although right now, Yi Shiwen was a lot weaker than Violent Ape King, but as long as he didn't receive a direct frontal attack from it, he could continue to heal his minor injuries by eating the medicinal pills, and like this, he could keep on playing around with the Violent Ape King. Initially, his punches and kicks almost had no effect on the Violent Ape King, and even if he tried his best, he couldn't shake its huge body. But now he had become stronger and could easily push it several steps back. In such a short interval of 10 days, the progress in his Buddhist strength was simply unbelievable. The continuous process of getting beaten up and healing again and again to rapidly increase the body strength had actually worked. And finally, he had reached the critical point of Hotian 8th stage and was only a step away from Hotian 9th stage. Once he entered the Hotian 9th stage, he would be able to climb a step above his current strength of 99 tigers and would finally acquire the strength of a dragon. Yi Shiwen suddenly took out his long blade from the scabbard on his back, which released a bright light, and a daoqi, shaped like a long blade, chopped out towards the Violent Ape King. Violent Ape King suddenly punched out fire waves towards Yi Shiwen, but these fire waves were instantly chopped down by the daoqi, which then rushed forward and directly collided into its huge fist. Yi Ziwen's blade attack was so fierce that it had actually cut out deep wounds on its body. Even the bones were visible, and the blood was constantly flowing out of these wounds. Roar! The Violent Ape King suddenly cried out in pain, and its eyes looked even more brutal. Numerous flames flared out from the gaping wounds on its body, and the scene resembled a volcanic eruption. The Violent Ape King had directly turned into a violent flaming ape. Flames burst out from the punch of Violent Ape King and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. But he calmly looked into the blood-red eyes of Violent Ape King because he sensed that its movements had started to look very slow. Boom! Suddenly, something exploded inside Yi Shiwen's body, and he, who had not been able to have a breakthrough for a long time, finally had breakthrough. Tyrant's body technique suddenly started to revolve wildly inside his body. The strength of 99 tigers started to gather at one point inside his body and started to transform into an immense strength. His strength was no longer decentralized and had started to unite together. Boom! At this moment, Tyrant Body Technique finally broke through to the first layer of the Xiaoqing realm, and he finally acquired the strength of a dragon. Yi Shiwen heard a faint voice of a dragon within his body. He fiercely opened his eyes. An imposing aura spread out, and he threw a kick towards the Violent Ape King. Bang! Yi Shiwen once again kicked the Violent Ape King. However, this time, the terrifying strength of a dragon present in his kick directly blasted away the Violent Ape King, and it tumbled down to one side. However, he did not continue to chase after it to give the killing blow, because he sensed that the Zhen Qi inside his body had begun to stir up and was constantly revolving around. Yi Shiwen knew that he was about to have a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen constantly condensed the Zhen Qi inside his body. His body had already acquired a touch of Xiantian Jin Qi, and at this moment, this early experience had played a guiding role in transforming countless amount of Hotian Jin Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi. He didn't know how much time had already passed. It seemed like many years had passed, but also like only a few seconds had passed. After he had condensed the Zhen Qi, he felt that 10% of the Hotian Zhen Qi inside his body had fully transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi. Boom! Yi Shiwen finally broke through to the Hotian 9th stage. After breaking through to the Hotian 9th stage, Yi Shiwen suddenly laughed out and once again looked towards the Violent Ape King with a glorious look in his eyes. His blade shined brightly, and Daoguang rushed towards the mighty Violent Ape King and chopped it into two halves. NT, Daoguang means blade light. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. Towards the Fingya Mountain, Yi Shiwen was unbearably delighted in his heart. And why wouldn't he be? He finally acquired the strength of a dragon, and 1/10 of his Jin Qi had already converted into Xiantian Jin Qi. He was confident that now he could easily compete with a Xiantian master. Yi Shiwen had found Luo Tian's notes in his storage ring, and learned from it that Xiantian realm was also divided in 9 stages, and these stages depended on the amount of Zhen Qi already transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi. If 10% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, then the expert would break into the Xiantian first stage. If 20% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, then the expert would reach the peak of Xiantian first stage. If 30% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, then the expert would break into the Xiantian second stage. In other words, now that he possessed the strength of a dragon and had also successfully transformed 10% of his Gen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi, he could open up the world bridge of Xiantian realm, and then he would be able to compete with a Xiantian first stage master, though he would still lack the endurance of a Xiantian master. However, his strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. But this happiness was short-lived, because even if he could compete with a Xiantian master, but after all, he had not yet entered the Xiantian realm and there was still a long way to go. Almost half a month had passed with only 10 days left. Within this time, he needed to continue to increase his score, although he had already gained a lot of points by killing those Zhang disciples. But he still felt that his score was not enough to win a blood yuan fruit. Now that his fighting power was comparable to that of a Xiantian master, it had become too simple for him to earn points, because now even the demon beasts of peak Hotian 9th stage were simply not his match. Days passed. Yi Shiwen beheaded many demon beasts on the way to Fingya Mountain, and his score also increased rapidly. 5 days later, his total accumulated points had gone over 10,000 points, and during this period, he had also found a yellow token. He didn't have an experience of this kind of competition, and he didn't know if the score of 10,000 points was good enough or not. So he had followed the rule of the more the better and had continued to collect as much points as he could. However, the time to exit the Blood Yuan territory had almost arrived, and Yi Shiwen rushed towards the central region of Fingya Mountain. There, Blood Yuan fruit was about to mature, and at that time, Blood Yuan territory would open up and the 4 elders would come inside to reward the fruits to the top scorers. There was no need to worry about someone picking up the Blood Yuan fruits in advance, because if it was picked by someone before it had fully matured, then it would lose all its miraculous properties and become a useless fruit. Everyone, including Xiantian demon beasts, knew about this fact and wouldn't touch it before it fully matured. Those Xiantian-level demon beasts possessed wisdom. In fact, it could be said that after entering into the Xiantian realm, demon beasts gained intelligence and wisdom. As these Xiantian-level demon beasts grew stronger, their wisdom also increased with their strengths. These wise demon beasts were called true demon beasts, and the Hotian realm demon beasts were nothing compared to them. Even formidable demon beasts could change their appearance into that of a human, and they belonged to the race named Yaozu race. And Yaozu means demon race, near the forest of Fingya Mountain. A group of dozens of Yi Yuan school disciples had gathered. The group was being led by both Yi Feng and Zhang Yang in the direction of central region of Fingya Mountain. According to the time informed by the elders, Blood Yuan fruit was about to mature, and then they would also be able to get out of the Blood Yuan territory. In a blink of an eye, a month had already passed, and it was enough to gather all of the Yi Yuan disciples together, and at the same time also hunt for the points. The sole purpose of this rule was to encourage the 2 sides to kill each other. After entering this dimension, all of the disciples had been scattered throughout the territory, and similar to Zhang family, Yuan school disciples had also searched for each other and gathered together, because staying alone and away from the main group could be life-threatening. In the beginning, both sides had a lot of casualties. Both sides had killed a lot of stray disciples from the other side until Zhang family and Yuan school disciples had gathered their own disciples and formed their respective groups. In addition to that, Xiantian demon beasts had almost disappeared from Blood Yuan territory. Every 10 years, both schools would send a large number of Xiantian masters into the Blood Yuan territory, and they had exterminated almost all of the Xiantian demon beasts, because these beasts required decades to reach the Xiantian realm. So, it could be said that the Blood Yuan territory didn't have any Xiantian demon beasts left, and even if there were some left, then they were only a few in numbers. And this was the reason why Yuan school had finally agreed to the idea of Zhang family to send their core disciples together inside the Blood Yuan territory. If there were Xiantian demon beasts running amok inside the territory, then they certainly wouldn't send their core disciples to their deaths. Also, Yi Feng had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, and his presence had helped in reducing the casualties to a minimum. However, a lot of core disciples had died, and the death count was at least over 15 disciples. All of they were the core disciples of Yi Yuan School, and losing even one could be considered a great loss for the school. But losing 15 of them was definitely a severe loss for the Yi Yuan School. Of course, Zhang family had also lost a lot of their core disciples. This competition is now coming to an end. Yi Feng said, "We will immediately go to Fingya Mountain and wait for 2 elders to arrive." Although they might encounter the Zhang crowd on the way to Fingya Mountain, but they had no choice. The fight between the 2 sides was inevitable. Moreover, they needed to hurry and reach there before those Zhang disciples could, so as to stop them from getting their hands on the blood yuan fruit. Everyone's face had lighted up because they were finally getting out of here. In this month, their strengths had greatly improved. There were more than a dozen who were initially at the peak of Hotian 8th stage and had broken through to the Hotian 9th stage. For many disciples, the purpose of coming here had already been achieved, and they had also greatly honed their skills. But we need to be careful of those sneaky Zhang bastards. Yi Feng continued, "This month, I have always felt that something's wrong. Except for the first few days of skirmishes, it suddenly got so peaceful. This is not their style." "You are right, but there are so many people in our group, and all of their plots will be totally useless against us," Zhang Yang said with a smile. Although the fat elder had commented that this year's group of core disciples was a lineup of losers, but that was not the case. Zhang Yang was confident that there were enough people in their squad to take care of those Zhang disciples, and as far as those top disciples were concerned, if he and Yifeng joined forces, then they could easily take care of them. So Zhang Yang was not worried at all. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. Zhang family's bastards die. There were a lot of giant, blood-red trees on top of the Fingya Mountain, and a bunch of 9 mouth-watering red fruits could be seen hanging from one of those trees, exuding a very seductive aroma, which was gradually spreading out in the surrounding area. These were the precious blood yuan fruits, found in blood yuan territory. Under those blood yuan fruit trees, there was a huge pile of corpses of demon beasts, ranging from the Hotian 9th stage demon beasts to even half a step Xiantian demon beasts. Next to these corpses, 2 groups were confronting each other. The group of Yi Yuan School disciples was being led by Yi Feng and Zhang Yang, while the Zhang's group was being led by the mysterious youth surnamed Lu. "You people are really mean. You actually plan to have sole possession of all blood yuan fruits?" Zhang Yang said coldly, while staring at the Zhang disciples. "Give up the idea, because when our elders will arrive, you guys are really going to get it. Let's beat these bastards to death." All of the Yi Yuan School disciples were furious and started shouting. Yi Feng narrowed his eyes but did not speak anything. He had led all of the Yi Yuan School disciples all the way up to here, and after arriving here they had encountered a group assault from a flock of demon beasts. They had faced a lot of difficulty in beheading all of those demon beasts. And right after this, these young disciples had appeared to take away all of the blood yuan fruits. This matter had gone totally out of hand. "If you are not willing to give up, then die." Zhang Jingxin narrowed his eyes and said in a cold voice, "You will kill all of us? Then we will find you and send a punitive expedition to punish all of you." A Yi Yuan School disciple got furious and said, "Ha ha ha! Punitive expedition to find us? For what reason? You Yi Yuan School disciples were all killed and eaten by the demon beasts, so why do we have to be responsible for your deaths?" Zhang Guiqi laughed loudly and looked at the Yi Yuan School disciples as if looking at dead people. The complexion of the Yi Yuan School disciples suddenly paled. Was it possible that these Zhang disciples had planned to kill them all and pretend that they had been massacred by the demon beasts? And if their Yi Yuan School could not produce strong evidence to prove what actually happened, since these disciples of Yi Yuan School are so stubborn, massacre them all. The cloaked youth surnamed Lu said. Zhang disciples did not hesitate to release bursts of murderous aura. Yi Feng also jumped into the fight, but in just 1 month, the strength of these Zhang disciples had actually improved a lot. But Yi Feng was relieved to see that 3 of the Zhang's 7 top disciples were not present. He could only see 4 of them, and being half a step into the Xiantian realm, he could easily handle 4 experts of peak Hotian 9th stage. However, he certainly did not know that the other 3 had already been beheaded by Yi Xuan. However, Yi Feng was getting a bad intuition about that mysterious cloaked youth. He was having a dangerous feeling, and this intuition of his had saved him many times in the past. The youth surnamed Lu suddenly rushed out, and Yi Feng actually saw that each of his steps was creating a huge crack on the ground. A terrifying, imposing aura unleashed from the body of that mysterious youth and locked firmly on Yi Feng. Xiantian, he is actually a Xiantian master. Yi Feng was startled because, being half a step into the Xiantian realm, he very well understood how much terrifying a Xiantian master could be. For martial artists, the Xiantian realm was like the first step. Hotian realm was like laying the foundation, and becoming a Xiantian master was like completing the first transformation. A terrifying, imposing aura had spread throughout the area and was completely suppressing the morale of the crowd like a mountain itself, and a normal human being would definitely faint under such pressure. This was the coercion of a Xiantian master, and those disciples could bear it only because they were considered elite among the elites and possessed firm minds. For ordinary disciples, only a look from a Xiantian master was enough to severely injure or kill them. Everybody run. Wait for the arrival of our 2 elders. Then we will settle things with them. Yi Feng shouted. He drew a long sword from his back and stood in front of everyone to give them a chance to escape. Ha 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 ha! Do you think they can come in? The youth surnamed Lu suddenly laughed and said, and looked at Yi Feng and other Yi Yuan disciples, as if watching a group of ants. This space has already been sealed from inside. Someone will come to your rescue. Stop dreaming, ha 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 ha! What? Yi Yuan school disciples felt a shock in their hearts. The space had been sealed. It actually meant that Blood Yuan territory had been locked, and no one would be able to leave or come inside. They had been trapped inside to die. They go too far. Everyone, let's fight with them. A Yi Yuan school disciple roared. Yes, let's fight. We won't die like scapegoats. Overconfident, kill them all. Do not leave even a single one alive. The cloaked youth, surnamed Lu, said in a cold voice. However, his eyes were constantly staring above at the matured blood Yuan fruits. His eyes were revealing a greedy look. That youth, surnamed Lu, suddenly drew out his long blade and instantly chopped out a terrifying coercion, accompanied with a dazzling Daoguang, which rushed towards Yi Feng. NT. Daoguang means blade light. The surrounding aura instantly condensed into a row of Daoqi, which clustered together into a roaring dragon and instantly flew towards Yi Feng. Yi Feng struck his sword, and the Jianqi erupted out of its tip, containing even more power than that of the peak Hotian 9th stage. Boom! A fierce collision occurred between the Daoqi and Jianqi in the air and caused a terrifying blast which sent out a layer after layer of strong air waves in all directions. The power of Daoqi released by the youth surnamed Lu didn't diminish and severely hit Yi Feng's body. Poof! Yi Feng spat a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying upside down. Overconfident, the youth surnamed Lu said with disdain, Brother! Yi Rushue rushed out from the crowd and ran up to the side of her brother, Yi Feng. Do it! Kill all of them and leave no one alive. Zhang Jingxin cruelly said. Zhang disciples screamed loudly and rushed towards the Yi Yuan school disciples. Suddenly, a loud piercing sound came out of nowhere and spread throughout the sky together with a huge Daoqi, which chopped out instantly towards the group of Zhang disciples. Zhang family's bastards die. A loud voice thundered in the sky. Several Zhang disciples tried to escape, but couldn't, and instantly got chopped down into pieces. Who is it? That youth surnamed Lu was the first to shout. It's me. A figure could be seen from far, getting closer. The eyes of everyone were filled with horror because it was actually Yi Xuan. It's actually you? How is this possible? You should not be. Zhang Jingxin said with an unbelievable look on his face. It's quite unexpected, right? Yi Xuan sneered and said, Unfortunately, it didn't happen the way you had wished for because I have already chopped down those several other Zhang losers you sent after me. How dare you? Zhang Jingxin said in a shocked tone because they were not just one of the ordinary core disciples. They were one of the top 7 disciples of Zhang family, and out of those 7 top Zhang disciples, Yi Xuan had already slaughtered 3. Zhang Jingxin immediately became furious. "NT, I am currently editing chapter 58 and 59. It will take time, so expect them in few hours." Chapter 58. Chapter 58. Suppressing a Xiantian like the disciples of Yi Yuan school. The disciples of Zhang family, after practicing to a certain extent, would also enter into the Tianfeng Hall. Zhang family was itself considered a high-level family in the Tianfeng Hall, and every year, a lot of Zhang disciples would enter into the Tianfeng Hall. Like any place, Tianfeng Hall also had a very intense competition among the sections. Large and small forces would always be competing with each other. Zhang Jingxin was this year's ringleader for Zhang family, and in the future, this group would also be led by him. Yi Xuan had killed 3 important disciples from his future team, and by doing so, he had enraged Zhang Jingxin. With the sudden appearance of Yi Xuan, the morale of Yi Yuan school disciples had boosted up. Fuck these bastards! Kill! The morale of Yi Yuan school disciples had immediately mobilized. You are courting death! The youth surnamed Lu said in a cold voice, Attack! The Zhang disciples immediately rushed towards the Yi Yuan school disciples. Boom! The 2 sides severely clashed against each other like the 2 mighty currents in an ocean. The eyes of the disciples from both sides had become bloody red with killing intent. Boy, you are courting death! Zhang Jingxin roared and rushed towards Yi Xuan. That youth surnamed Lu looked towards the blood yuan fruits on a hilltop and flew up to snatch them. But how could Yi Xuan allow him to succeed? He instantly pursued after Lu, skimming up the hill. However, right at this moment, Zhang Jingxin's sword rushed over and stabbed towards Yi Xuan. Get the fuck out of my way! Yi Xuan shouted. The Daoguang horizontally chopped down a mighty Daoqi, which swept away towards Zhang Jingxin. Bang! Zhang Jingxin's Jianqi was simply not powerful enough to even put a scratch on Yi Zaiwen's body. And just like Yi Feng was helpless in front of the youth surnamed Lu, he was also in a similar situation and was definitely not a match for Yi Xuan, who had already condensed 1/10 of his Zhenqi into the Xiantian Jinqi. The difference between the Xiantian and Houtian Zhenqi was more qualitative than quantitative. This meant that even a small amount of Xiantian Jinqi was strong enough to beat a huge amount of Houtian Jinqi. In addition to that, Yi Zaiwen's strength was much better compared to Zhang Jingxin's strength. So, when the long blade of Yi Xuan chopped down, it directly deflected the sword of Zhang Jingxin and sent him flying like a broken kite, spitting a mouthful of blood. Yi Xuan didn't even stop to look at Zhang Jingxin and continued to pursue after that youth surnamed Lu. How dare you stop me? The youth surnamed Lu furiously said. Shabu! The youth surnamed Lu turned back in a flash and chopped out his blade twice towards Yi Xuan. Yi Xuan instinctively used his long blade, causing the Zhenqi to burst out, and a Daoqi horizontally chopped out towards the youth surnamed Lu. Boom! The 2 similarly tyrannical Daoqi met in midair and collided, which caused a terrifying blast. How is this possible? The youth surnamed Lu people saw the Daoqi released by Yi Zaiwen's long blade and suddenly said in a surprised tone, Impossible! How can you possess Xiantian Jinqi? As a master of the Xiantian, he could easily sense the Xiantian Jinqi. But he could clearly feel that Yi Xuan was definitely not a Xiantian expert. But how could he possess such a huge amount of condensed Xiantian Jinqi when he was still a Houtian realm expert? Impossible! Yi Xuan sneered. With just an exchange of blows, he had already found out the ins and outs of this youth surnamed Lu. Undoubtedly, he was a Xiantian master, but he was still way weaker compared to Luo Tian. And most importantly, just from looking at his Jin Qi, Yi Shiwen had realized that Lu had just entered into the Xiantian realm and had not even transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi. This was the biggest advantage for Yi Shiwen. You should worry about yourself first. You injured my brother, ordered an attack on the disciples of my Yi Yuan school. For doing all this, I will take everything back from you with interest. Yi Shiwen screamed and attacked again. Seeing that ridiculously powerful Lu had been completely pushed down by Yi Shiwen, suddenly, the morale of Yi Yuan school disciples reached its pinnacle. They didn't fear Zhang disciples, but they were scared of that powerful youth surnamed Lu, because even Yi Feng, the most powerful core disciple of Yi Yuan school, was not a match for this enemy and had been easily defeated. This had made them feel insecure about their future, but now, although they did not know how Yi Shiwen would resist a Xiantian master, but he had already blocked an attack from Lu, which was good news for them at that time. The Yi Yuan school disciples understood that this was a battle of life and death, and there was no possibility of mutual compromise. They immediately rushed into the battlefield and clashed against the Zhang disciples. The youth surnamed Lu suddenly flew off the ground to dodge an attack from Yi Shiwen. But Yi Zaiwen's blade skill had already reached the ultimate level, and the speed of his blade attack was so fast that it had instantly arrived in front of Lu. Lu was very depressed. He was a dignified Xiantian master, but he had actually been pressed down by a master of the Hotian realm. Yes, he had been completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen, because Yi Shiwen actually had the power of a dragon, which was not beneath the strength of Lu. And Yi Shiwen had already transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. That was also more compared to the extent of transformation achieved by the youth surnamed Lu. Lu was considered a genius in the Tianfeng Hall, but today he was getting suppressed by a master of the Hotian realm. How could he accept this? He suddenly yelled out, "The flaming blade!" Suddenly, the Zhen Qi attached to his long blade instantly started to burn up, and from afar, it looked like a flaming blade. The flaming blade danced in the hands of the youth surnamed Lu. The burning air produced sizzling noise, and a terrifying heat wave rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The amount of heat present in this flaming blade's heat wave attack was astonishing. This astonishing heat wave instantly swept towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered again and again. He instantly chopped down his Daoqi in the sky, directly towards the incoming heat wave. The terrifying Daoqi suddenly broke out, and the incredible pressure present in his Daoqi instantly suppressed that astonishing heat wave. Boom! 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 The two terrifying Xiantian Jin Qi fiercely collided and caused an intense explosion. During their confrontation, the youth surnamed Lu had been completely pressed down by Yi Shiwen. Yi Zaiwen's blade chopped out nonstop and instantly released 9 blade shadows which covered the sky in a curtain of countless blades which completely enveloped the youth surnamed Lu. How could I, an invincible Xiantian master, be defeated by you? The youth surnamed Lu suddenly said in a frightened tone. He could not accept that he had actually been completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Boom! The youth surnamed Lu had no way left to escape and could only wait for Yi Zaiwen's blade to arrive. The terrifying strength of Missing Moon Beheader exploded and had actually enlarged to a frightening extent. The youth surnamed Lu was like a prey in the lion's den, waiting to get mutilated. In spite of that, Yi Shiwen once again chopped out a brilliant Daomong towards the youth surnamed Lu. NT, Daomong means blade tip. NT, Chapter 59 in few hours. Chapter 59. NT, since many of you guys got impatient, so I am releasing this chapter today. Chapter 60 to 63 will come as a grand release tomorrow. Chapter 59. Beheading a Xiantian Yi Zaiwen's blade had become even more terrifying when he had used the Xiantian Jin Qi along with his blade skills. Lu had just entered into the Xiantian realm, but Yi Shiwen was not even a Xiantian expert. Then how could he use Xiantian Jinqi so easily? Lu was shocked because, compared to him, Yi Shiwen was more skilled at using the Xiantian Jinqi. But Yi Shiwen also knew that he was not a Xiantian expert like Lu, and his ability to recover the consumed Xiantian Jinqi was very slow compared to that of Lu. Even if he had converted 10% of his Zhenqi into the Xiantian Jinqi, but once exhausted, it would take a lot of time to recover. So, he didn't have the luxury of having a protracted fight with Lu. But obviously, Lu knew that this was the only weakness of Yi Shiwen, so he made up his mind to drag on this fight and keep on running until Yi Shiwen had fully exhausted his Xiantian Jinqi. Regarding those Zhang disciples, he simply didn't care whether they lived or died. To him, they were nothing more than sacrificing pawns, and as long as he could attain a blood yuan fruit, he wouldn't feel a thing even if they were to die. Yi Zaiwen's long blade released a tyrannical Daoqi, and his Xiantian Jin Qi filled the air. He was not planning to drag this battle for too long and wanted to finish it as soon as possible. Yi Zaiwen's long blade was tyrannically powerful. Just from a look, it could be seen that Yi Zaiwen's understanding of the blade skills was far superior to that of Lu, although both of them had practiced their blade skills to the same level. Yi Zaiwen's Daoqi was similar to a storm, and Liu's Daoqi was like a flickering candle in the wind, which could extinguish any moment. "How can you be so strong?" the youth surnamed Lu said, and he finally couldn't maintain the usual cold expression on his face, and his complexion had turned pale. The existence of a Hotian expert who could actually have an upper hand while fighting a Xiantian master was something incomprehensible to him. He had never heard of such an incredible expert before. Yi Shiwen didn't care why the other party was surprised, because he knew very well that he didn't have the luxury to waste any more time. He needed to quickly finish this battle. Die. Yi Shiwen chopped out an enlarged and extremely tyrannical new moon beheader once again, and 9 blade shadows fully enveloped the youth surnamed Lu. How is this possible? I am Lu Ji, and I am considered as a genius. Like hell I would die in such a damned place. One day I would enter into the Zhendao realm and become invincible. The youth surnamed Lu roared, and his flaming blade chopped out. Boom! The blade shadows clumped around Lu Ji, and his movements were severely constricted by the long blade of Yi Shiwen. Right then, Yi Zaiwen's eyes flashed because he realized that this was the opportunity he was looking for. Yi Shiwen had been waiting for an opening like this, and had finally appeared. He was getting the upper hand, and his plan was to take advantage of Liu's constricted movements. His blade chopped out, and several blade shadows obscured the sky, where each of these blade shadows was false, but also real at the same time. He had practiced New Moon Beheader to the Deshang realm, and that had turned this attack into an extremely devastating one. This seemingly aimless and scattered blade attack had put Lu Ji in a very difficult situation. Dang! 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 A loud metal clashing sound spread everywhere, accompanied by an air explosion. The area surrounding the two of them had become a forbidden death zone, and none of the other disciples had dared to go closer. But they did not mind those two because they themselves were busy in fighting with each other, although their fighting level was way below compared to the big fight of Lu Ji and Yi Shiwen. But they still were the core disciples of Hotian 8th or 9th stage, and were fighting desperately in a life and death battle, where anyone could kill or get killed. Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body technique had also reached the first layer of the Xiaoqing realm. Not only had his strength successfully surpassed the strength of 99 tigers, his body had also become insanely tough, causing even his gestures to possess a terrifying strength. By practicing tyrant body technique, one could attain the overbearing strength of a tyrant, and even a single physical attack from the practitioner would be devastating for the enemy. By practicing it, one could become overbearingly invincible. His blade skill was already at the level of a sword overlord, and he also possessed tyrant body technique. Having blade skills of sword overlord and body strength of a tyrant complemented each other. Yi Zaiwen's body was tougher compared to that of Lu Ji. Even his blade skill had reached an ultimate level and was better than Lu Ji's blade skill. This had put Lu Ji into an extremely difficult situation. Everyone was watching this fight and was somewhat astonished. Yi Shiwen was so insanely strong that he had completely suppressed a Xiantian realm master, Lu Ji, to such a pathetic state. Lu Ji was extremely depressed. He never thought that a day like this would come in his life where he would be pressed down by a Hotian realm expert. Missing Moon Beheader, the first blade. Yi Shiwen finally played his trump, and his Daoqi directly rushed towards Lu Ji. Boom! Lu Ji's terrifying Xiantian Jin Qi merged with his blade, which turned into a boundless Daoqi and swept across the blade. The second blade. With a lightning speed, Yi Shiwen chopped out the second blade. He constantly poured out his Xiantian Jin Qi into his blade to form a terrible Daoqi, and it swept towards Lu Ji. Boom! Lu Ji hand began to crack under the power of Missing Moon Beheader because the power present in Yi Zaiwen's attack had increased to a terrifying level. Third blade. Yi Shiwen did not stop and chopped out yet another blade, as if to capture the heaven and earth. Bang! Lu Ji's blade instantly shattered under the terrifying force present in Yi Zaiwen's attack. How is this possible? This can't be happening to me. Lu Ji yelled in a frightened voice, and it seemed as if he had completely lost his mind out of fear. NT Jinghuang Shirtsua is an idiom which means to lose one's head out of fear. After seeing that Yi Shiwen had chopped out the fourth blade, Lu Ji suddenly shouted, "No, you cannot kill me, I am..." However, he did not get enough time to finish what he was trying to say because Yi Zaiwen's long blade had already chopped out the fourth blade, and in a flash, Yi Zaiwen's terrifying Daoqi instantly split him in half and his blood splattered everywhere. When Yi Shiwen suddenly chopped his blade, his body's Xiantian Jin Qi had been completely depleted in this attack, since his inner state had not broken through to the Xiantian realm. So he didn't possess endless Xiantian Jin Qi like Lu Ji. The power of Missing Moon Beheader was significant, and blades were stacked together and were chopped out one after another, causing the total power to reach a terrifying level. But the degree of consumption of Jin Qi would also rise proportionally. Initially, when Yi Shiwen was using his blade attacks on Lu Ji, then his Xiantian Jin Qi consumption was not that much. But when he chopped out the fourth blade of Missing Moon Beheader, then all of the Xiantian Jin Qi present in his body had been depleted. He could not even chop out the fifth blade, and in the worst-case scenario, if Lu Ji had survived the fourth blade attack, then he would have left with no other choice but to chop out the fifth blade. And this fifth blade attack would have contained only the Hotian Jin Qi, reducing the attack power significantly. You actually killed him," Zhang Jingxin said in a terrified voice. He was shocked and looked unbelievably at Yi Shiwen, because he had not expected that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to kill Lu Ji. "Do you know who he is?" "I don't care who he is." Yi Shiwen sneered and said he intended to obstruct this competition, so he got what he deserved. Chapter 60. Chapter 60. The curtain drops. I don't care who he is. Yi Shiwen sneered he intended to obstruct this competition, so he got what he deserved. You will die. You have dared to actually kill him." Zhang Jingxin said again and again. There is nothing to say, because he had it coming. At this time, Yi Feng substantially restrained his injuries and said, "That idiot actually dared to enter the Blood Yuan territory and assumed he would be invincible here." Although Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school was only a branch of Yiyuan sect, but underestimating it would be a mistake. Many years ago, Yiyuan school had been established on Qingfeng Mountain, and in these several years it had sent many disciples to study in the main sect. Now, most of these disciples held very high positions, and this showed that Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school had a lot of strong backings, and Zhang family's situation was also similar. Otherwise, how could a top-class treasure like Blood Yuan fruit? which could leave any Xiantian master drooling, be monopolized together by a Yuan school, and Zhang family? Kill them, kill all of these cheaters. Yi Feng shouted loudly, which boosted the morale of Yi Yuan disciples. And now that Lu Ji had been killed by Yi Shiwen, they were no longer worried. However, Zhang disciples had suddenly lost their morale. How dare you? Our Zhang family will not let you off. Zhang Jingxin roared. Won't let us off. Idiot, it was you Zhang people who conspired to seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits, and also brought this Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory. You have brought this upon yourselves. Yi Feng sneered and said, this time Zhang family had crossed the line, and by bringing in a Xiantian master, they had also cheated in the competition. Their plan was to massacre the Yi Yuan school disciples and blame it on the demon beasts. Also, they had attacked Yi Yuan disciples after the competition had officially ended. The explanation for their actions? There was no need for that because both sides had been hostile towards each other for a long time and were sworn enemies. And the actions of Zhang family had totally agitated the hatred inside the hearts of Yi Yuan school disciples. Not to mention, Yi Yuan school disciples had a reason to attack, so they didn't need to explain their actions. Right, kill these bastards. Kill them, leave no one alive. The disciples of Yi Yuan school roared in succession. They had almost walked into the jaws of death, and knew that if Yi Shiwen had not taken care of Lu Ji, then they most likely would have died at the hands of Zhang disciples. Kill these bastards and take revenge for our fellow brothers. Before, many of our Yi Yuan disciples have died at the hands of these bastards, so it's time for payback. Zhang disciples, disperse. Zhang Yuelian quickly shouted, kill, kill, kill. Zhang disciples had all been exterminated. No one thought that it would actually turn out like this. I did not expect it to become like this. Zhang Yang said with some emotion in his voice, don't worry, this is a competition, and casualties are inevitable. Moreover, this time they dared to cheat and actually brought a Xiantian disciple inside. Yi Feng said, but when Zhang family gets the information about this, they will probably not let us off. Zhang Yang said, are you afraid of Zhang family? Don't underestimate our Yi Yuan school. Yi Feng said while smiling, however, from now on, I am afraid that the title of most powerful top disciple from the younger generation is no longer yours and has been taken away by your younger brother. Zhang Yang said with a genuine smile on his face and looked at Yi Feng. Yi Feng had been a renowned genius from a younger age, and even if he had been stuck at the peak of Hotian 8th stage for several years, no one could shake his position as the top genius, and once he had a breakthrough, he had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm. Becoming a full-fledged Xiantian master was only a matter of time. Of course, that's my brother. Yi Feng laughed and said, as if he did not care, soon we will together enter into the main sect, and countless elites from the entire great Yu state come to study there. We're going to meet many genius evildoers over there. Ha ha ha. That is our stage. I have a feeling that when your brother enters into the main sect, he is going to turn the sky and the earth upside down. Zhang Yang said, he is such an evildoer. I heard that he was not this fierce during the inner disciples competition, although he was quite powerful and had also won the championship, but I never thought that he would actually defeat a Xiantian master. And Fan Tian Fu Di is an idiom, and it means sky and the earth turned upside down. Complete confusion. Ha ha ha, well, he is my younger brother after all. Yi Feng laughed and seemed very happy. Yi Shiwen did not laugh like Yi Feng and was thinking about something else. For him, this fight with Lu Ji was too meaningful and was not an easy one like his fight with Luo Tian. When Yi Shiwen had killed Luo Tian before, he had already been severely injured by Hua Minghan, so it had become quite easy to behead him. However, the fight this time was different, and it could be counted as Yi Zaiwen's first true battle with a Xiantian master. Even if Lu Ji had only just entered into the Xiantian realm, but he was still a terrifying existence for Hotian realm masters. The Xiantian and Hotian realms were very different in nature, and the way of fighting was also different for the experts of these realms. Yi Xuan had gained some insights from his battle with a Xiantian master, and he wanted to start practicing as soon as possible and completely digest the enlightenment he had attained. He believed that after complete digestion, he would be able to condense a total of 20% Xiantian Jinqi, and then he would be capable of completely beating any master of the Xiantian first stage. NT. Here, digest is used in the sense of completely comprehend and apply. By that time, Yi Xuan would be considered to have set foot on path of the true martial way of spiritual practice, and even after entering into the main sect, he would have a high status and wouldn't become someone else's vassal. NT. Disciples with low cultivation level are treated as slave disciples in the main sect. As for how to exit the Blood Yuan territory, Yi Xuan was not in a hurry. Since Lu Ji had just entered into the Xiantian realm strength, it was impossible at his meager strength to seal this dimension for too long. He must have used some external means that won't last longer. Anyways, soon the two elders of Yi Yuan school would find out about this abnormal situation and would immediately open the Blood Yuan territory forcefully. Therefore, Yi Xuan was not in a hurry. But Yi Yuan school disciples didn't waste any time and immediately rushed to pick off all of the Blood Yuan fruits from the Blood Yuan trees. After all, the most important thing, which had caused all of this bloodshed, was the Blood Yuan fruit, and they were prepared to face even the great Zhang family for the sake of these fruits. Some time later, in the distant sky, the space began to fluctuate like ripples on the water surface, accompanied with a loud rumbling sound, and in the sky, a huge door opened up and 4 figures jumped in. The first 2 elders to enter the Blood Yuan territory were the short and tall elders of the Zhang family. Even from far, Yi Xuan could clearly see the prideful smile on their faces. But after seeing the scene inside the Blood Yuan territory, their complexion immediately turned gloomy. Chapter 61. Chapter 61. Confrontation. The first 2 elders to enter the Blood Yuan territory were the short and tall elders of the Zhang family. Even from far, Yi Xuan could clearly see the prideful smile on their faces. But after seeing the scene inside the Blood Yuan territory, their complexion immediately turned gloomy. How did this happen to the disciples of my Zhang family? The tall elder said while skimming down from the sky. At this time, his gaze fell on the Yi Yuan school disciples, standing on the ground, and he quickly understood who might have caused all this. He suddenly got furious and shouted, "You little bastards, you actually massacred the people of my Zhang family!" The aura of the tall elder instantly scattered out and spread into the sky. This terrifying, imposing aura was firmly locked onto the Yi Yuan school disciples. Well, the disciples of your Yi Yuan school are simply insane. The short elder roared in an angry voice, "I will kill all of you and bury you all along with my people." The tall elder shouted, "Bastards, you 2 old animals, you won't dare to lay your hands on my Yi Yuan school disciples." Another loud voice thundered. Both fat and thin elders released their terrifying auras, and a murderous look appeared on their faces. "You 2 old bastards are trying to cover for your Yi Yuan school disciples," the tall elder furiously said. "They massacred the disciples of our Zhang family, so I will kill them all and take revenge." The tall elder said bitterly, "Take a hike." The thin elder shouted, "Zhangquan, Zhangping, you 2 bastards, don't you dare hurt my Yi Yuan school disciples." The tall elder Zhangquan shouted, "I don't care, I want them dead. Get lost." The fat elder shouted loudly and immediately rushed over to where Yi Xuan and Yi Feng were standing and asked, "What on earth happened here?" The fat elder did not expect that things would become this troublesome, although casualties were inevitable in a fierce competition like this. But Zhang disciples had been completely wiped out, which had totally shocked him. The strength of this year's core disciples of Zhang family and Yi Yuan school was about the same. So, the complete destruction of one party at the hands of other was almost impossible. These Zhang bastards, actually, the disciples of Yi Yuan school, quickly talked at once and explained what happened in detail. As the fat elder was listening, his face suddenly became livid. The other 3 elders also heard, and suddenly their complexions also became strange. So, your Zhang family is the reason behind all of this. You deliberately let a Xiantian master come in. What were you trying to do? The thin elder snapped. They actually dared to send a Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory, and also tried to ambush Yuan school disciples, in order to seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits. Their crime is really unforgivable. The thin elder also had a lingering fear, because both elders, Zhang Quan and Zhang Ping, had become even more furious, and it would be difficult to stop them from hurting the disciples if they used their full strengths. You will regret it. Zhang Quan gritted his teeth and said, You will pay the price. What regret? This time, you should regret it because this matter is not over yet. And when the time comes, we will come for you and settle the score. The fat elder sneered. Suddenly, both elders Zhang Quan and Zhang Ping were aggrieved after learning about the heavy losses Zhang family had faced this time. This is your side of the story, because if we really had sneaked in a Xiantian master, then all of you should be dead by now. Zhang Ping quibbled, Let me see. Zhang Ping instantly spread out his hand that was surrounded by the rapidly building Lingqi, which finally condensed into a giant hand, and instantly shot down towards Yixuan. Zhang Ping's eyes flashed fiercely and were filled with killing intent, staring at Yixuan. How dare you? Both fat and thin elders yelled at once. The giant hand had instantly come in front of Yixuan. Yixuan instantly took out the long blade from the scabbard on his back. His long blade shined brightly, and a white blade light spread into the sky. Then it took the form of a blade and chopped out toward Zhang Ping. And blade light is said Daoguang boom. A terrifying blade light and the great hand made up of Lingqi severely collided in the air, which filled the entire sky with starlight. Zhang Ping suddenly screamed while holding his hand. A big, deep wound had been cut open on his hand, and his blood had started to pour out. That looked like a spring of blood. He had let his guard down for only an instant, but he had still been injured by Yi Zaiwen's Daoqi. Immediately, with a sinister look on his face, his eyes stared firmly at Yixuan. However, he could clearly feel that Yixuan was just a master of the Hotian realm. But how did his attack actually injure a great master of Xiantian realm? His bladiki clearly contained Xiantian Jin Qi, but how could a Hotian realm master possess Xiantian Jin Qi? And his Xiantian Jin Qi was also powerful enough to injure a senior Xiantian master. But Yixuan clearly was only a warrior of the Hotian realm. Seeing that Yixuan had taken advantage of Zhang Ping's carelessness and had actually inured him, the thin elder suddenly laughed and said, Zhang Ping, you old fool. You actually got injured by a junior from our Yuan school. You are so pathetic. Zhang Ping bitterly looked at Yixuan, but he knew not to attack again because both fat and thin elders had become cautious. He would probably have to face their thunder attacks if he tried to attack again, although all of the 4 elders had similar strengths. But Yixuan was an anomaly because Zhang Ping had been unable to figure out the true depth of his strength. The presence of Yixuan had shifted the balance of strength towards the Yuan school side. After this farce, the 4 elders didn't doubt anymore and accepted that Yixuan had killed a Xiantian master, but were also quite shocked because it was truly unbelievable. How could a Xiantian master die at the hands of Yixuan, who was only a master of the Hotian realm? But Yixuan had just showed his incredible prowess by catching off guard and injuring Zhang Ping. Not to mention, Zhang Ping was a superior Xiantian master compared to Lu Ji. At this time, Zhang Quan grinded his teeth and said, Now, we know that Yixuan has killed Lu Ji, so we do not want anything else. As long as you hand over Yixuan to us, we will not pursue this matter anymore. Get lost. The fat elder sneered and said, This time your people were the first to violate the regulations. And you want to punish a disciple of my Yuan school? Don't be so delusional. Just wait till we inform your ancestor about all this. This time you have to hand over Yi Xuan to us. Otherwise our Zhang family won't let you off, because Lu Ji was the disciple of our Tianfeng Palace Hall's great elder." Zhang Quan said, "Did not you hear what I just said? They had dared to conspire for blood yuan fruit. Humph, they really were courting death." The fat elder said. At this time, the space inside the blood yuan territory once again started to fluctuate. "NT, I may or may not release Chapter 62 and Chapter 63 today." Chapter 62. Chapter 62. Rewards of the violent fluctuation in the space. A person walked out of the door from the sky. Everyone looked at this person and actually saw that it was none other than the ancestor of Yi Yuan School, Lin Zhantian. Lin Zhantian step by step came down from the sky and walked to the front of Zhang Ping and Zhang Quan, then said, "Go back and tell the master of your family that this matter has not ended yet. Later, I will personally give him a visit and sort this out." Lin Zhantian had easily sorted out this mess. He had clearly proclaimed that this matter was not over yet, and taking Yi Xuan away was obviously impossible for the Zhang elders. The faces of Zhang Ping and Zhang Quan flushed with anger, but they didn't say anything because they were scared to anger Lin Zhantian. The cultivation level of Lin Zhantian was unfathomable, and no one could ascertain as to how much extent he had cultivated. After the unexpected emergence of Lin Zhantian, all of the Yi Yuan School's disciples felt relieved. They felt completely safe in their hearts because even if the two Zhang elders were to suddenly get mad and attack, nothing bad would happen to them in presence of Lin Zhantian. Everyone had extraordinary confidence in Lin Zhantian, and even Yi Xuan was no exception. After Lin Zhantian had arrived, Yi Xuan had finally relaxed his tightened body a bit. The reputation of Lin Zhantian as the most powerful master of Qingfeng Mountain's Yi Yuan School had never wavered for many years. Several years ago, he had arrived here from the main sect, and at that time the Lord of Zhang family had challenged him to a duel and had lost miserably. Although their duel had been kept secret from public, but people of Yi Yuan School knew about it. After all, it was such an honorable feat, only the outer sect disciples did not know. But all of the disciples present here were core disciples, so naturally they knew about it. Lin Zhantian was known as the strongest ancestor to ever come in the history of Yi Yuan School. In the end, no one knew how strong he actually was. Many years ago, he had arrived on the Qingfeng Mountain and miserably defeated the master of Zhang family. But this had happened several years ago, and it was hard to make a guess about how much his cultivation would have progressed in these many years. Although Yi Xuan couldn't guess the depth of Lin Zhantian's true cultivation, but just now, when he saw him easily walking high up in the sky, Yi Xuan realized that perhaps Lin's strength had already reached a terrifying level. "NT, Lin Kong means to be high up in the sky." Even the experts of Xiantian level couldn't easily achieve such a feat of walking high in the sky, and that too in such a relaxed manner. Actual flight was something that only the masters above the Xiantian level could achieve. NT? Xiantian masters couldn't fly as easily as Lin Zhantian could. Lin Zhantian didn't say anything else to Zhang Ping and Zhang Quan, and simply arrived to Yi Zaiwen's side with a bit of a smile on his face and said, "Good! This time you have performed wonderfully and didn't lose your father's face." Then Lin Zhantian, with the crowd of disciples and two elders, went straight back to the Yi Yuan School, and all of them returned to the main hall of Yi Yuan School's ancestor. Lin Zhantian looked at the disciples of Yi Yuan School and said, "I learned about the things that happened there in Blood Yuan territory, but your scores are still valid, and now the winners will be selected based on these scores. The top 3 can each win a Blood Yuan fruit and a Xiantian pellet as the rewards. The rest can also have the rewards prepared for you." Yi Xuan was dumbstruck. He knew that the first 3 were going to receive a Blood Yuan fruit each. But regarding Xiantian pellet, Lin Zhantian had just added it as the reward for the top scorers, and was definitely a compensation for the incidents that took place in Blood Yuan territory. But he already had a Xiantian pellet, so getting another was not too meaningful to him. Lin Zhantian had come up with 3 Xiantian pellets so easily, But Yi Xuan did not feel strange about this matter. After all, he was the ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School, and he also had the backing of main sect. There were a lot of masters of Xiantian level or more studying at the main sect, so giving out 3 Xiantian pellets at once was not something impossible. Soon, the scores had been calculated. Yi Xuan had scored the highest score of 19,000 points. Yi Feng got the second best score of 6,500 points, and Zhang Yang got the third best score of 5,300 points. Yi Ruxue was ranked 12th, which was quite a surprising for Yi Xuan. Even if she had participated in this competition with a lot of Hotian 9th stage masters, she had still managed to get a good enough rank. However, according to Yi Zaiwen's observation, it was only a matter of time before she would actually break through to the Hotian 9th stage. They were going to enter into the main sect after 3 months. These 3 months were enough for Yi Ruxue to break into the Hotian 9th stage, and even improve a lot. She was only 20 years old, and a year older than Yi Xuan, but had already practiced to this extent, and this proved that her talent was not inferior to Yi Feng. NT, I had written 2 years older than Yi Xuan, which was a typo, and it actually should be 20 years old and 1 year older than Yi Xuan. Yi Zaiwen's cultivation pace was very fast because he was relying on special space. Without it, his talent was not at all comparable to his 2 older siblings. Yi Xuan had already made up his mind that he would give the extra Xiantian pellet that he had to Yi Ruxue, because he did not need 2 Xiantian pellets. With the help of Xiantian pellet and her natural talent, the future progress of her cultivation would be incredibly fast. As the top scorer, Yi Xuan was the first to receive the rewards: a blood yuan fruit, a Xiantian pellet, 50,000 low-grade spirit stones, and an opportunity to learn a Xiantian power technique, as well as a large number of medicinal pills. The rewards he had got were far more than what he had expected. Now, Yi Xuan did not need to worry about shortage of spirit stones in the near future and could easily practice for long intervals inside the special space. The most important thing was that the blood yuan fruit was something even the Xiantian masters were envious of. Only 9 fruits matured in a period of 100 years, and even Xiantian masters had to spend half of their lives waiting. The value of a blood yuan fruit was immense in the eyes of Xiantian masters, because as long as they were in the Xiantian realm, eating a blood yuan fruit would be able to immediately enhance their cultivation, regardless of which stage they were on. Although a blood yuan fruit was not of any use to the masters above the Xiantian realm, however, it was very beneficial to become the Zhendao master of Xiantian realm. But then why had it not been taken away from the hands of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan School and Zhang family in all these years? Although Xiantian pellets weren't rare inside the Yuan School, but there was no doubt that it was very precious. A Xiantian pellet didn't have any side effects and would not affect the future cultivation of the expert. This was the reason why this pellet was so well known. But unfortunately, it was only useful to promote an expert at the peak of Hotian 9th stage to the Xiantian realm. NT, I won't make any promises, but you may expect Chapter 63 in few hours. Tongue sticking out. Chapter 63. Chapter 63. Coiling Dragon Palm. NT. This technique can also be called Panlong Palm. But even so, it could be said that Xiantian pellet was a very precious treasure. But Yi Xuan already had a Xiantian pellet, and now he was in a possession of 2, which was redundant for him. Yi Xuan and the other 2 winners had got free access to the secret books library and could learn a Xiantian level power technique, which was a very precious opportunity for them. Needless to say, Xiantian level power techniques were very precious, and if he could learn a Xiantian power technique, then his fighting prowess could greatly improve. After the 3 winners had received their rewards, Lin Zhantian said, "The 3 of you come with me. We will go to the secret books library to choose Xiantian power techniques for all of you." Yi Xuan and the other 2 followed Lin Zhantian and arrived at the secret books library. The 3 followed him inside, all the way to the top floor of the library, where, compared to the huge number of books on the lower floors, only 20 books were present. However, Yi Shiwen knew very well that these few books were far more precious compared to the books on the lower floors. The three of you are our Yuan School's most outstanding disciples of this year, Lin Zhantian said. You are the three top disciples of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan School. But Qingfeng Mountain is located in the remote regions of Great Yu State, and you must know that countless geniuses gather to study at the main sect, where you're going to study in 3 months. All three were quietly listening to Lin Zhantian's explanation and did not refute. Indeed, main sect was a place where even masters of the Hotian 9th stage could only become outer disciples, and those with their cultivation level lower than the Hotian 9th stage could only be regarded as Zai disciples. NT? Zai means handyman, part-time worker. The criterion to enter into the main sect was very lenient. Main sect allowed entry to the masters of Hotian 7th stage or above, but no one would enter before they had already reached the Hotian 9th stage because they were not stupid. Although the status of outer sect disciples was not high, but it was still better than that of the Zai disciples, and most importantly, the resources available at the sub-schools were nowhere near the vast resources available at the main sect. It was easier for the outer sect disciples of main sect to advance to the Xiantian realm, and this is the reason why every year the sub-schools would send their talented core disciples to practice in the main sect. For many years, the main sect had become a base for the talented disciples, sent by these sub-schools to study and cultivate. Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan School was just one of the many Yuan sub-schools located at different places. A few months later, several geniuses from the Great Yu State would gather at one place and practice together. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but feel excited about this. According to the news I received, a lot of sub-schools are sending Xiantian masters to enter into the main sect. Lin Zhantian said, this time they have trained some peerless geniuses, and main sect is going to get flooded with many geniuses. That is the reason why I had agreed to Zhang family's proposal to have the core disciples competition in the Blood Yuan territory, so that you all can have some life and death battle experiences and benefit from it. Xiantian Master. All three of them were shocked to hear that. Yi Feng and Zhang Yang were at the peak of Hotian 9th, and Yi Feng had also entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, so they naturally knew more than anyone that how much difficult it actually was to break into the Xiantian realm. And even after entering half a step into the Xiantian realm, Yi Feng would still need to prepare because there would be a lot of stronger people studying in the main sect. Although after entering into the main sect, they would be able to quickly advance to the Xiantian realm. But thanks to the main sect before or after entering into the Xiantian nature, or a great difference. Although Yi Shiwen was not at peak of Hotian 9th stage, but his fighting power could be compared with a Xiantian master, and after fighting and defeating one, he had finally understood what sort of power and presence a Xiantian master held in the world of martial arts. No wonder Lin Zhantian had given them such generous rewards. Right now, you three have the chance to enter into the Xiantian realm in a short span of time, and therefore I decided to give Xiantian pellets to all of you. In the next few months, when you must have to try your best and completely break through to the Xiantian realm, and at that time, these Xiantian pellets would help you to safely enter into the Xiantian realm. Lin Zhantian said without hiding anything. Competition was present everywhere. There was a competition between Zhang family and Yuan school, but it was just a competition between two sub-schools. Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school was one of the patrons of main sect, and so it also had a lot of rival schools, and they also used to send disciples to study in main sect. The disciples of these rival schools would always have violent fights after entering into the main sect. Each of you can also choose a Xiantian level power technique, Lin Zhantian said, and it was clear that his plan all along was to help them in rapidly enhancing their strengths in a short time. Yes. 3 of them nodded together, and they also knew that after entering into the main sect, things won't be so peaceful over there. Good. I have told you everything. Now quickly go and choose a Xiantian power technique. Lin Zhantian said. The contest between several sub-schools actually included the contest among the top geniuses representing their sub-schools, and the overall strength of the current year's batch. Yi Shiwen and other two didn't wait and began to choose a Xiantian powerful technique. Some of these techniques were powerful and some were weak, but all of them were top-class Xiantian power techniques, and ranking them was very difficult. Thunder and lightning chain spear. Floating cotton blade. Yi Shiwen looked at the Xiantian secret books, one after another, but he couldn't find a suitable one for him. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen caught a glimpse of a bit older secret book, quietly lying in the corner. Coiling Dragon Palm. These 3 large characters, printed on its cover, came into the sight of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen then walked over to the corner and picked up that old secret book. He slowly opened its first page, but suddenly a loud shout from Lin Zhantian entered his ears. "Don't open the book!" But Yi Shiwen had already opened it. Boom! Yi Shiwen suddenly heard a loud roar of a gigantic dragon, and a scary thought instantly break into his mind. Suddenly, a huge figure of a person appeared inside Yi Zaiwen's mind. This figure was fuzzy and didn't seem real. But suddenly, the figure shot out its palm, and a gigantic blue dragon ascended into the sky. It looked up towards the sky and roared loudly, while its powerful claws fiercely grabbed the blue dome of heaven, which seemed to crack under its tremendous strength. NT? Sanqiong is an idiom which means the blue dome of heaven. Yi Shiwen simply felt that his entire mind would get ripped apart by this gigantic blue dragon, and his psyche would collapse. Each time the giant palm shot, it seemed to contain the divine providence itself, and brandished a gigantic dragon. By this time, a flock of gigantic dragons were soaring in the sky. Yi Shiwen felt as if his mind would collapse any time. Then, suddenly, within his mind, a burst of intermittent colorful lights appeared inside the mysterious space and completely absorbed all of these scary thoughts. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his eyes while panting heavily and covered in cold sweat. "Are you all right?" Lin Zhantian immediately arrived in front of Yi Shiwen and asked in a worried tone. "It's nothing, I am all right," Yi Shiwen said with a burst of lingering fear. Chapter 64. Chapter 64. Rapid advancement in cultivation. Yi Shiwen was sweating heavily after that scary thought had attacked his consciousness and had almost destroyed his mind. This was quite a terrifying experience for him. "Are you all right, little brother?" Yi Feng asked in a worried voice because he did not know what exactly had happened to Yi Shiwen. He just saw Lin Zhantian shouting and suddenly rushing towards Yi Shiwen, who was drenched in sweat and looked terrified at that moment. "It's nothing, I am all right," Yi Shiwen said in a calm voice. However, that vivid thought had firmly imprinted itself into his mind, and it had become impossible for him to forget it. "Blame me," Lin Zhantian said. "I did not warn you in time, but you cannot read this secret book of coiling dragon palm." "Why?" Yi Shiwen asked. "A long time ago, our forefathers had brought back this coiling dragon palm power technique from the ruins of a suspected ancient martial arts era," Lin Zhantian slowly explained. "Ancient martial arts era." All of the 3 disciples exclaimed at once. In ancient times, there existed an extremely glorious martial arts civilization, and now only a few bits and pieces of that era had remained. The once glorious era of martial arts had now just turned into a legend. Yes, this power technique comes from the ancient martial arts era, but after obtaining it from the ruins, no one could actually learn it because this type of martial arts technique is inherited and learned through thoughts, and no one could withstand the immensity of that thought. Lin Zhantian explained, "It contains a mighty writing, and the method to learn this technique is hidden as a thought between the lines. Long ago, a lot of our ancestors had tried to inherit this martial arts technique, but in the end, the thought present inside this secret book had destroyed their souls and killed them. After a long time, no one paid attention to it anymore, and it finally fell into my hands. I brought it here but due to a temporary oversight, I was distracted and forgot to warn you kids about it. Fortunately, all three of you are all right. Yi Shiwen had a burst of lingering fear, because just now his soul might have been torn apart by that terrifying thought and his mind would have completely collapsed. If this thought had not been sucked inside the mysterious space, then he would definitely have faced a mental breakdown and death by now. The thought was really too frightening, and no one knew who had created or passed down this incredible martial arts technique. But it contained just handwritten text. Then how could it actually contain such a terrifying thought? Hidden among the text, and even the passage of innumerable years couldn't erase it. From this, one could easily infer the incredible prowess of the creator of this book. You can't learn this martial arts technique. You absolutely cannot, so give it up. Lin Zhantian said. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't argue with Lin Zhantian, but he also knew that the terrifying thought had been absorbed into the mysterious space. Later, if he wanted to take a look at it, he could do it any time, so he didn't need to argue over something that he had already acquired. Yi Shiwen kept the secret book of coiling dragon palm on the shelf and chose another power technique called restraining breath technique. Although a lot of power techniques, more or less, mentioned about how to hide one's breath. However, this power technique specialized in the field, not to mention it was also a Xiantian level technique. NT? Hiding breath means to hide one's cultivation level. Others were surprised because they couldn't understand why Yi Shiwen had not chosen an attack-type Xiantian power technique, but rather he chose such a technique that would be useless for fighting. However, they did not know that Yi Shiwen had already learned many fighting-based Xiantian-level power techniques, and if he was to choose one more, it would be equivalent to biting off more than he could chew. After each of the three winners had chosen a power technique, the core disciples competition had finally come to an end, and whole Yuan school had become noisy, talking about the recent incidents. The news of Zhang family sending a Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory to massacre the Yuan school disciples and seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits had spread throughout the school, but no one would have thought that this Xiantian master had been killed instead, along with all of the other Zhang core disciples. Overnight, the news spread in the Yuan school like a forest fire, and the headline clearly referred to Yi Zaiwen's exploits and how he had single-handedly beheaded a Xiantian disciple. Now, everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had actually beheaded a Xiantian disciple of Zhang family. In a short period of time, Yi Zaiwen's reputation had incredibly surpassed that of those established top disciples of previous years, and many disciples had started to recognize him as the strongest top core disciple. However, when there was uproar in the outside world, and everyone was talking about the exploits of Yi Shiwen, but he seemed to have vanished and no one could find him. After choosing a Xiantian power technique, Yi Shiwen didn't waste time and shut himself up to start the closed-door practice. He was going to the main sect after 3 months, so while he still had time, each second of it was valuable for practicing because he needed to be strong enough to sustain himself among the geniuses who were also going to enroll with Yi Shiwen. After entering into the main sect, the competition would be even more intense. In a blink of an eye, a month's time had already passed. In the backside of Qingfeng Mountain, the intermittent loud roars of a dragon could be heard echoing in the sky. Yi Shiwen had a calm expression on his face, and suddenly, his palm shot out and a figure, with its hands clasped together, leaped inside the mountain forest using dragon tiger steps. Boom! With a loud sound, a large tree instantly collapsed by a forceful slap of Yi Zaiwen's palm using coiling dragon palm. Yi Shiwen stopped his movements and calculated the time and found out that he had been practicing over a month. In just a month, his strength had progressed by leaps and bounds. His cultivation had reached all the way to the peak of Hotian 9th stage and was only one step away from entering into the Xiantian realm. He had also condensed 20% of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi, and his strength had directly reached the strength of 3 dragons, which was even comparable to the strength of a Xiantian 2nd stage master. Now, Yi Shiwen had become powerful enough to easily defeat a Xiantian expert like Lu Ji in few moves only. Also, during this month, Yi Xuan had gained the most progress in his martial arts techniques, and for that he had to burn a large number of spirit stones to advance his martial arts skills faster in a short span of time. The first was Missing Moon Beheader. After a month of crazy practicing, he had finally succeeded to reach the Deshang realm, and now he could strike 9 consecutive blades one after the other, which was big feat even for a Xiantian master. And chopping 9 consecutive blades was the dead end for Missing Moon Beheader. But with the strike of each additional blade, the total might of the attack would also increase significantly, and after 9 consecutive blade strikes, one could imagine the terrifying might present in the 9th blade. After a month of continuously burning the spirit stones, his celestial step technique had also reached the next level. Initially, this technique was incomplete and could only be regarded as an advanced technique. At that time, Yi Xuan had practiced it to the Deshang realm, but later, inside the special space, he completely deduced the missing Xiantian realm parts of celestial step. Although he had merely mastered the first glimpse of Xiantian realm parts, but now his speed had increased by more than 50% of what it used to be. It could be said that his speed had increased to a terrifying level. While practicing tyrant body technique, he had finally reached the peak of Xiaocheng realm and was only one step away from entering into the Deshang realm. And once he did, his physical strength would grow rapidly. Lastly, he had completely practiced restraining breath technique to its highest possible level. Chapter 65. Chapter 65. Departure after completely mastering the restraining breath technique. Now, even if he stood next to a master of the peak Hotian 9th stage, his breath would not be discovered. And so long as he was careful enough, he had full confidence to pull a fast one on a Xiantian master. Yi Xuan also discovered that the utility of restraining breath technique was far more than just restraining the breath. It could even change the breath of the practitioner completely into another person's breath, which was very rare. And this technique could manipulate the cultivation level. He had spent a lot of time on practicing coiling dragon palm and had also burnt a large number of spirit stones so that he could continue to stay inside the special space present in his mind. That scary thought had been absorbed by the special space, and now he could practice coiling dragon palm as and when he wished to do so, because inside that mysterious space he did not need to be worried about that scary thought going berserk inside his mind. So long as he had time and enough spirit stones, Yi Xuan could observe and emulate this coiling dragon palm technique, but it was too subtle and his cultivation level was too low to be able to fully comprehend it. After a month of continuous burning of spirit stones, he had begun to comprehend only a section of that thought and had learnt the first move of coiling dragon palm, named Hidden Dragon Rising from the Abyss. The power present in the move, Hidden Dragon Rising from the Abyss, was tremendous, but it came at a major cost, because once used, it would consume 10% of the Xiantian Jin Qi instantly. This month, the strength of Yi Xuan had progressed extremely fast, enough to surpass the rate of consumption of spirit stones. In just a month to practice inside the special space, he had consumed more than 50,000 spirit stones, which was more than half of his total stock of spirit stones. Although he had not yet entered into the Xiantian realm, but now he was confident enough to beat any master of the Xiantian first stage, and he could even compete with the masters of Xiantian second stage, and could easily exchange blows with them. After continuously practicing for a month, Yi Xuan did not continue to stay in the backside of Qingfeng Mountain and returned to the Yi Yuan school. What? You are going to walk alone to the main sect? At the Yi family's residence, the members of Yi family were sitting on a dinner table, and suddenly, Xia Chuanxue exclaimed. With a puzzled expression on his face, Yi Kongming looked at Yi Xuan, because he couldn't understand why Yi Xuan had planned to walk all the way to the main sect. Do you know how long it takes to walk from Qingfeng Mountain to main sect? Xia Chuanxue asked. At least more than 2 months if you walk at a moderate pace. I know, but my cultivation has reached a bottleneck, and I think that walking all the way to the main sect would turn out to be a good training for me. Yi Xuan said, generally, main sect would always send giant demon birds to serve as mounts for the disciples. These flying mounts were not uncommon in the main sect, especially for those Xiantian masters who were unable to fly, and these demon birds acted as their mounts to fly in the sky. There were a variety of mounts available, such as to fly in the sky, to run on the ground, and to swim in the water. These flying demon birds also served as a communication link between the Qingfeng Mountain and the main sect. Therefore, although they were going to enter into the main sect in just 3 months, but Yi Feng and other core disciples were not anxious and were quietly waiting for the people from main sect to come and pick them up. Yi Kongming looked at Yi Xuan, then turned his face toward Xia Chuanxue and said, "If he wants to go alone, then let him go. He will gain a lot of experience from this journey, and he will also get a chance to learn about the local customs, which will be quite beneficial for his future practice. But going by the road can be dangerous." Xia Chuanxue said in a worried voice, "Kids need to have their own adventures because you can't expect a circus tiger to hunt in a wild forest. Wun'er is not a kid anymore, and we can't protect him for a lifetime." Yi Kongming said, "Well, but you have to be very careful on the way." Xia Chuanxue said, "And I will." Yi Xuan nodded, and then he took out a porcelain vase from his bosom and said, "This is a Xiantian pellet. When the time comes, please give it to sister for me." At that time, both Yi Feng and Yi Rushua were doing closed-door practice in order to have a breakthrough before heading for the main sect. "Isn't this Xiantian pellet yours? How can you give it your sister?" Xia Chuanxue immediately said, "What will you use?" "Rest assured, I have 2 Xiantian pellets," Yi Xuan said, and he knew that it was very difficult for them to believe him, so he took out the other Xiantian pellet in front of them. "Then it's all right." Xia Chuanxue had to agree. Both Xia Chuanxue and Yi Kongming were considered enough to not ask about the source of this second Xiantian pellet. At that time, they were both glad for Yi Rushua, because now, with the help of a Xiantian pellet, she would be able to safely enter into the Xiantian realm. They were very happy because all of their children loved as well as supported each other. The 3 siblings would support each other after entering into the main sect. Just knowing this much was enough for Yi Kongming and Xia Chuanxue, and they couldn't ask for anything more. They just wanted their children to lead happy and peaceful lives. When Xia Chuanxue accepted the Xiantian pellet for Yi Rushua, a genuine smile appeared on Yi Xuan's face. After coming to this world, he had lost all of his previous relationships. His loved ones had been left behind in the previous world, and now everything related to his original world existed only in his memories. So, the existence of Yi family worked as a mental support for him, and he was genuinely happy to be of some help to them. After coming to this world, Yi Xuan had totally freaked out when he noticed that he possessed memories of 2 persons. In order to get rid of this confused mental state, he had decided to create a new identity for him in this new life and world. And he cared a lot for his family members and could do anything for their sake. Yi Zaiwen's decision to walk alone all the way to the main sect had caused a huge buzz in the Yiyuan school because he was not an ordinary disciple, but was a rare talent of a Yuan school because he had become the strongest top core disciple after killing a Xiantian master. He had become the ace of Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school, and if he would walk alone to the main sect, then everyone feared that he might face an accident on the way. Moreover, Yiyuan school had many enemies, including Zhang family, and they could pose a threat to his life. However, the principle of this world was might is right. While executives did not quite agree to his decision, but Yi Xuan didn't care about their stand and had already decided that next morning, after packing his things, he would leave Qingfeng Mountain and walk towards the main sect. Chapter 66. Chapter 66. Blue flaming flower. The sun was setting in the western sky, and one could hear a burst of hoofs. The sunlight had drawn a long shadow of the person riding on a horse. On a horse, a teenager clad in black clothes was rapidly riding on the main road. While riding the horse on the main road, a small town appeared in Yi Zaiwen's field of vision. Since leaving the Qingfeng Mountain, he had already traveled for 2 days on the main road. In the Qingfeng town, he had bought a fast horse for 500 low-grade spirit stones, and this was no ordinary horse, because it carried the blood of a demon beast in its body. There was a large distance between Qingfeng Mountain and Yuan School's main sect, and took about 2 months to cover this distance by road, and an ordinary horse would die before covering even 1/10 of this distance. For Yi Shiwen, a common horse was just not enough. He was a strong expert with Xiantian level skills in his body. He could go without eating and sleeping for days, but that was not the case for common horses. However, this horse contained the blood of a demon beast in its body, increasing its endurance and making it 2 times faster at the same time. So now Yi Shiwen did not need to spend all his time on the road and could stop and practice as well whenever he wanted to do so. Yi Shiwen entered this small town and asked around to find out that this town was called Keojiaji, and Chao family had the biggest influence in this town, to such an extent that the entire town relied on the businesses owned by Chao family. Yi Shiwen also discovered that there were many warriors of varying strengths going in and out of the town. The weakest among them were at the Hotian 6th stage, and powerful warriors had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, and some were even the masters of Xiantian realm. He found an inn to settle down and found a place for the horse as well. He wanted to have dinner, so he took a seat in the dining hall of the inn, and a waiter came forward to give him a warm welcome. "Sir, what can I do for you?" "First, give me a bowl of herbal tea and a variety of side dishes along with it." Yi Shiwen placed the order. To hasten his journey, he didn't have time to eat and won't always get proper time and place to relax and have dinner. "Right away," the waiter replied. "Waiter, wait for a second. I have something to ask you. Is something going on in the Keojiaji town? I see a lot of warriors wandering around here." Yi Shiwen asked, "Sir, have you not enlisted yet?" The waiter said in a surprised voice, "Well, in the radius of 30 li, our Keojiaji town is located on an underground magma pool, and recently, someone found the blue flaming flower in a dormant volcano. The news about it spread wide and far and attracted many warriors. 2 days ago, the lord of our Chao family has also started to recruit brave warriors to send an expedition." Blue flaming flower? Yi Shiwen gawked and never thought to hear about such a rare treasure in a small town like this. He had read in many records that it grew only in the extremely high temperature environment of magma. Of course, there were many benefits one could get by consuming this flower. It could transform the mortal body into a fire spirit, and then one could practice fire attribute power techniques, which was quite rare. But why recruit warriors for that? Yi Shiwen asked this question because who wouldn't want to hog such a rare treasure? "Good question, sir, because a monster lives inside the magma pool to guard the treasure." When the waiter said monster, he could not help but shiver a bit, and that ferocious monster has already killed several scout warriors. "So there is such a thing." Yi Shiwen frowned, but a demon beast guarding a rare treasure was a very normal thing. But this was obviously not a general demon beast. Otherwise, it would not have made such uproar. "What do you know about that monster?" Yi Shiwen asked. "All I know is that Chao family is now recruiting warriors who can slay this monster, and if you are interested, you may enlist your name as well." The waiter said, "It would be nice if you killed that monster, because Magma Pool is not far away from the town, and the monster would frequently visit here, and has also killed people from the Chao family." Originally, Yi Shiwen just wanted to take a rest in this small town, but now he had become very interested in that blue flaming flower, and decided to wait and see what would happen in the end. After about a minute had passed, and the inn slowly began to get crowded, and almost all of the rooms had been booked in no time. Yi Shiwen also booked a room, then slowly sat down on a seat and began to eat and drink together. In the last 2 days, he didn't get a chance to have a relaxed dinner like this. Then, suddenly, Yi Shiwen noticed a tower-like, large man entering inside the inn. He glanced around and saw that all the seats were occupied, and right then he saw Yi Shiwen sitting by the window. He strode to the front of Yi Shiwen and said in a low, muffled voice, "Boy, step aside and quickly get lost, then grandfather will spare your life." "And tea. To speak in a low, muffled voice is an idiom. Get lost! Yi Shiwen did not turn his head, but shouted loudly. Only the strong commanded respect in this world which followed the principle of might is right. Yi Shiwen looked weak compared to that burly man that had resulted into this situation. What did you say, you little bastard? The brawny man suddenly stared at Yi Shiwen with his big eyes, and his big hand instantly shot towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen slammed his palm on the table, and suddenly a chopstick flew up from the table. Yi Shiwen struck the chopstick with his palm using the coiling dragon palm power technique. Phew! The chopstick exuded a sharp piercing sound and flew with a lightning speed towards the big hand of that brawny guy. Ah! The brawny guy screamed in a loud voice when the chopstick pierced right through his palm with a terrifying force and sent his body flying. That severely hit on the wall, and his hand got firmly nailed on the wall by that chopstick. The brawny guy was endlessly wailing while his hand was nailed on the wall. But from Yi Zaiwen's demeanor, it seemed as if nothing had happened at all. He took out a new set of chopsticks from the box and started eating once again. Yi Shiwen knew. At this time, there must be numerous people staring at him. These were the rebellious warriors and desperados. However, they had not entered into the Xiantian realm, so Yi Shiwen simply did not care about them. But this could be troublesome for him, because the rumors about the blue flaming flower and the enlisting of warriors for subduing the monster had attracted a lot of strong masters to arrive at this small town, and Yi Shiwen did not want to have a high profile. Now that Yi Shiwen had effortlessly defeated that noisy, burly guy in front of everyone, he could feel several gazes looking maliciously at him. Ha ha ha, this young brother's got some fine skills. NT, I will upload Chapter 67 in few hours. Chapter 67. Chapter 67, Monster. Ha ha ha, this young brother's got some fine skills. The sound of footsteps came from the upstairs, and Yi Shiwen saw a youth wearing embroidered clothes coming down the stairs while laughing heartily. I did not expect to actually be able to see such a skilled master here. It's so unexpected. The youth wearing embroidered clothes did not even look at that wailing brawny who was still conscious and had luckily not died. Yi Shiwen had a surprised look in his eyes. This youth had actually concealed his breath, but after practicing restraining breath technique, Yi Shiwen had become particularly sensitive and immediately found out that this youth was actually a great master of the Xiantian realm. He walked up to the front of Yi Shiwen and introduced himself. Hello, my name is Dai Xiaohua. Nice to meet you. What's your name, brother? NT, Dai Xiaohua means wearing small flowers. Dai Xiaohua. Yi Shiwen twitched his eyebrows. A big man like him was actually called wearing small flowers. Well, he seemed like an ignorant person to Yi Shiwen, but he apparently did not feel anything about introducing himself as wearing small flowers, or maybe he had gotten used to it. My name is Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen said, and he already knew that this youth was not malicious. After learning the restraining breath technique, Yi Zaiwen's understanding of other person's breath had progressed by leaps and bounds. It not only could restrain and change the breath, but could also tell whether a person was hostile or not, based on his breath. One could easily disguise the facial expressions, but breath was the only thing that one could never disguise. Ha ha! After looking for so long, I finally found a decent master. Dai Xiaohua smiled and said, unlike these motley crew. Dai Xiaohua was obviously talking about the warriors sitting in the inn. But surprisingly, although these warriors had angry looks on their faces, but they suppressed their anger and did not say anything. This made Yi Shiwen somewhat curious about Dai Xiaohua. There was a huge difference of martial arts heritage between these warriors and Yi Shiwen. They were simply a group of outlaws, and their daily jobs involved struggles between life and death. This had turned them into hot-tempered and irritable people. But they still didn't say any word on Dai Xiaohua's sarcastic comment. Not of all these warriors were in the Hotian realm, and there were some very strong masters among them, including some who had surpassed the Hotian realm. As if Dai Xiaohua had seen through Yi Zaiwen's curiosity, he laughed and said, It's nothing. These people do not acknowledge logic, but strength. Since they cannot defeat me, they can only endure. This straightforward reply from Dai Xiaohua left a good and deep impression on Yi Shiwen, and this frank youth was far better than those other warriors. Brother Yi, are you going to enlist yourself as the brave warrior of Chao family? Dai Xiaohua asked. Yi Shiwen nodded. Ha ha, let's join together then. Dai Xiaohua laughed and said, Well, let's go then. Yi Shiwen laughed and was somewhat curious about the background of this youth, because he was so young and was already a Xiantian master, so one could imagine the strength of a master who had taught such a genius. Come on, we go now. Dai Xiaohua said. So late? Yi Shiwen asked. It's not late, because every night the monster comes to visit this small town. Chao family is anxious and wants to recruit strong masters to protect the town from this danger. Dai Xiaohua said. They did not sit there for too long and immediately headed towards Chao family's manor. Since the entire town was run by Chao family, so the Chao family's manor was located at the center of Keojiaji town. Dai Xiaohua had come to a few days ago and was familiar with the Keojiaji town, although the color of the sky was gradually getting dark. But Chao family's manor had a brightly lit appearance with countless torches lighting up the night sky. At this time, the door to Chao family's manor was still open, and several gatekeepers were guarding the gate. When they saw the two of them coming together, a guard immediately approached and shouted, Who are you? We brothers heard that your Chao family is recruiting warriors. We have especially come to enlist ourselves. Dai Xiaohua approached and said. Then, after a few minutes, two Chao family's executives came out to welcome them and said, This time many people from our Chao family have been killed by the monster, and I hope that you can help us catch the monster. We Chao family will be highly obliged. These two men were the high-level executives from Chao family. To prevent any more casualties by the recurring attacks of the monster, they had recruited many warriors and had dispersed them in all directions inside the town to protect the people. According to my daily observations, the monster comes into the town almost every day, so tonight we should be able to see a good show. Dai Xiaohua said while lying down on a bench in the garden and holding a weed in the mouth, smiling in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged on a nearby bench and started practicing. He was practicing in the special space and could exit from that space any time, so he was not worried. As time passed, night grew darker, and surrounding sounds also disappeared gradually. People were holding their breath, waiting for the arrival of the monster. Dai Xiaohua did not stay there for long, and soon left to search for the whereabouts of that monster. Night grew deeper, and slowly the whole sky was obscured by the clouds and became pitch black, but Chao family's mansion still remained as bright as the day. Then suddenly Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and saw a giant hideous head in front of him. Fire sparks would come out from its breath along with a blow of heat wave. Clang! Almost instantaneously, Yi Shiwen took out his long blade from the scabbard on his back and chopped out a dazzling blade light towards the huge head. Dang! The blade light chopped on the giant head and unexpectedly produced a metal clashing sound. The sharp blade light drew a white mark on that giant head, but the monster was frightened from this sudden attack from Yi Shiwen and suddenly jumped back. Yi Shiwen finally got a look at this giant head. He actually saw a 10-feet-high beast with its 4 claws dug into the ground, covered with numerous red and black-colored dense scales and suffused with a breathtaking coldness with a slight tinct of fiery brightness. A terrifying aura firmly locked on Yi Shiwen, but he didn't wait and instantly chopped out a huge crescent bladiki towards that monster. At this time, the warriors present in the nearby locations finally discovered the monster and started to shout loudly to warn everyone. Monster! Monster! Chapter 68. Chapter 68. Firelin Beast. Monster! Monster is here! Someone shouted crazily, and suddenly the whole Keojiaji town shook with numerous warriors rushing out with torches in their hands. But this monster was ridiculously strong. Although Yi Zaiwen's blade attack was hasty, but it was still powerful enough to bisect a master of peak Hotian ninth stage. However, it still couldn't break the defense of the monster and could only put a scratch on its scales. Yi Zaiwen's sudden attack had scared it and had jumped back and ran away because the warriors from Chao family had also started to arrive at the scene. Many warriors started to pursue after that monster, but it was too fast and fled in a blink of an eye. However, during its escape, several warriors had been caught off guard and were torn apart by that monster. No one was able to stop this monster. Phew! Suddenly, a loud shout spread over, and Dai Zaiwa's figure flew down from a nearby roof. 100 stages God Fist. Dai Xiaohua blasted a punch with a terrifying strength which instantly vibrated the air and rushed after the monster. Boom! The massive strength present in Dai Zaiwa's attack directly crashed into the monster's body. Bang! The scales on the body of the monster immediately shattered. Dai Zaiwa's attack undoubtedly showed a completely different strength thanks to the condensed Jin Qi of a Xiantian second stage master. The monster was in a severe pain inflicted by this attack and wanted to stop and wreak havoc on the perpetrators. But it knew that Dai Xiaohua was not someone it could easily take on. It immediately picked up speed and, taking advantage of the dark night sky, it immediately fled away. It looked as if a red and black flame was passing gently but also swiftly across the sky. Dai Xiaohua chased after it, but after a while it had started to slowly pull away and leave him behind. He was tyrannically powerful compared to this monster. Especially his fist technique was incredibly powerful. But that was not the case with his agility skill. Although he had practiced a very powerful agility technique, but it had showed its inferiority at this critical time. The so-called law of biting off more than one could chew. Dai Xiaohua had practiced a very powerful Xiantian-level fist technique to a profound realm, and he had spent most of his time on practicing 100 stages God Fist, and by spending less time on practicing his agility technique, his agility skill had become inferior. Also, the speed of this monster was at a terrifying level, and most people could only see red and black shadows flying at an insane speed. Dai Xiaohua bitterly stopped. Unfortunately, at that time, he was far away from the monster. Otherwise, he had the confidence of stopping it. At this time, all of a sudden, accompanied with a gust of wind and a sharp whistling sound, a blurred figure instantly crossed Dai Xiaohua and chased after the monster. Dai Xiaohua immediately recognized that this figure undoubtedly belonged to Yi Shiwen, whose stature was smoothly and elegantly traversing while constantly flashing towards that monster. Dai Xiaohua could not help but be secretly surprised at Yi Zaiwen's amazing agility skill. Biting off more than one could chew was only a truth for other people. But this logic didn't apply on Yi Shiwen because even geniuses needed several years to completely master a martial art. But what about Yi Shiwen? For Yi Shiwen, so long as there were enough spirit stones, he would be able to fully master any martial arts in a very short amount of time. This was the reason why both his blade and agility skills were exceptionally strong. After only a few minutes of pursuit, Yi Shiwen had already left Keojiaji town behind, and while chasing after the monster, he had finally entered the mountain forest. "Don't run away like a coward. Stay behind and fight with me," Yi Shiwen shouted, and his blade chopped out a bright blade light which shone like a faint moonlight and instantly illuminated the entire forest while rushing towards the monster. Roar! The monster was anxious, and with a loud roar, its stature transversely shifted sideways with an incredible speed and dodged Yi Zaiwen's douchi. The monster turned around and stared fiercely at Yi Shiwen. Its two lantern-sized eyes flashed ominously and were firmly locked on Yiwen. Then it lifted its face up towards the sky and roared loudly. An ominous aura started to overflow from its body and openly disseminate everywhere. Yi Shiwen noticed that it was actually a Xiantian-level demon beast, and he didn't know about its species. The monster opened its big mouth, blowing a foul smell on Yi Zaiwen's face, followed by a surge of blue flames coming out of its mouth that instantly burned through the air and soared towards Yi Shiwen to sear him. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly jumped up high in the sky, directly over the monster and easily dodged those blue flames. Roar! The monster raised its head and opened up its big mouth to bite. You are courting death! Yi Zaiwen's long blade instantly chopped out a dazzling blade light that looked as if the stars were falling from the sky, and it severely cut into the body of that monster. Missing Moon Beheader. The strength of 3 dragons completely unleashed, and Yi Zaiwen's total strength surpassed the terrifying force of 10,000 Jin and instantly concentrated on a single point of attack. NT. 1 Jin equals 0. 5 kg. Bang! With a sound of metal clashing, Yi Zaiwen's blade attack, containing massive strength of 3 dragons, directly clashed into the monster's body and sent it rolling down on the ground. But it immediately stood up the very next instant. Yi Shiwen was flabbergasted because the defensive strength of its scales was unbelievably terrifying. Demon beasts generally held the advantage of possessing tough bodies compared to humans, but this extent of toughness was definitely rare. Yi Zaiwen's most powerful blade attack, endowed with the strength of 3 dragons, had actually just chipped a few pieces of the scales on its body. It could be said that this monster had the strongest defense among all of the demon beasts that Yi Shiwen had seen so far in his lifetime. It was such a terrifying demon beast that even attacks from a master of the Xiantian first stage couldn't break its defense, and this was the reason why Chao family could only leave this monster running amok. Yi Shiwen had also tried out its strength and confirmed that it had already reached the peak of Xiantian first stage, and even a master of peak Xiantian first stage was not its match and would only die if tried to fight with it head-on. The strength of this monster was comparable to that of a master of Xiantian second stage. So, even an anomaly like Yi Shiwen, whose strength was equivalent to that of a master of Xiantian second stage, could only fight with it on equal terms. However, it was impossible for him to defeat it at his current strength. After taking an attack from Yi Zaiwen's blade, the monster suffered small injuries and was in pain. It had realized that dealing with Yi Shiwen would not be easy. The explosive strength in its limbs burst out, and it suddenly leaped up and dashed into the mountain forest at an insane speed. It had actually become even faster than before. Yi Shiwen couldn't reach its insane speed and could only give up. Yi Shiwen walked back along the same route. At this time, Keojiaji town was already brightly lit, because the sudden attack of monster had alerted everyone, and people could be seen walking around inside the small town. Many people had gathered at the entrance of Chao family's manor, and a lot more had rushed there to see Yi Shiwen, and had already encircled him. Brother Yi, what happened? Did you catch up to that monster? Dai Xiaohua asked. No, it got away. Yi Shiwen did not want to reveal too many details of his fight with the monster. It's a pity because that was actually a Fire Lin beast. I did not expect to actually see a Fire Lin beast here. Dai Xiaohua said. NT. Chapter 69 in few hours. Chapter 69. Chapter 69. Strange. It's a pity because that was definitely the Fire Lin beast. I actually did not expect to see a Fire Lin beast here. Dai Xiaohua said. NT. Lin means unicorn. Fire Lin beast. That monster was a Fire Lin beast? No wonder my attacks didn't work on it. Its scales are way too hard, and I think even those famous precious armors are nothing in comparison. If only I could get those scales to make armor out of them, then I won't have to fear for my safety anymore. Those warriors were excited and still discussing about how Fire Lin beast had been unable to wreak havoc like earlier and had been easily driven out this time. But right now, Yi Shiwen was recalling the information he had about Fire Lin beast in his mind. Fire Lin beast was a very famous and unique type of demon beast that would take birth in a magma pool and could only survive in extremely hot place during its birth. There were rumors that Fire Lin beast contained the blood of ancient Fire Qilin beast in its body, but this was only a rumor and no one knew whether this was true or false. After all, like dragons, unicorns were also only a legend. NT. Qilin is the name for a mythical Chinese unicorn. Just like wyverns, Filong, were an inferior species of ancient dragons, your own. Fire Lin beast was rumored to be an inferior species of ancient fire Qilin species and contain their blood. Adults of Fire Lin beast species were able to surpass the Xiantian realm, so it could be deduced from its cultivation level that the said monster of Keojiaji town that was outrageously powerful and had been wreaking havoc for all this time was actually not an adult Fire Lin beast, and perhaps had taken birth not long ago, directly born with its cultivation level in the Xiantian realm. Yi Shiwen had mixed feelings after hearing this and sighed, because with respect to these unique demon beasts, the human race was really weak. Except for the wisdom, there was nothing else which could support the fact that humans were stronger than these unique beasts. But even so, humans still occupied the major areas of Zhanwujia world and were also its true leaders. Today, I would like to thank all of you for your efforts. Because of your presence here, we were able to scare away that Fire Lin beast, and this incident did not end up in a tragedy. At this time, a handsome middle-aged man came out from the Chao family's mansion and said, while cupping one hand into the other across the chest, "Lord is so polite. There is no need to stand on ceremonies, it's our job." This man was actually the lord of Chao family, named Chao Jinbiao. Anyway, today our Chao family escaped unharmed, and the credit for that goes to all of you. So, I will personally make sure to generously reward each and every one of you. Chao Jinbiao said, "Tomorrow, our Chao family will start an operation to eliminate that Fire Lin beast, and I wish for all of you to join us in this operation." Chao Jinbiao said, "No problem. Of course, we will participate in this operation." Many warriors laughed and immediately accepted the proposal of Chao Jinbiao to go and eliminate the Fire Lin beast. The beast had been driven away so easily, and this had increased their confidence. After all, even though a few people had died, but the Fire Lin beast had to actually flee for its life. Furthermore, a mere Hotian realm expert, like Yi Shiwen, had been able to chase after it and driven it away. However, Yi Shiwen was not so optimistic because just now he actually sensed that the cultivation level of Chao Jinbiao was already in the Xiantian realm. Although he had camouflaged his breath quite well, but he had accidentally leaked a very small amount of his breath, and that had been instantly sensed by Yi Shiwen. NT? Think of breath like an aura, which is directly proportional to one's cultivation level. After practicing the restraining breath technique, Yi Shiwen had become very sensitive to the aura of other people, and by virtue of a person's aura, he had been able to sense their cultivation level and strength. And Chao Jinbiao turned out to be a Xiantian master, but he seemed injured because his aura was very unstable when Yi Shiwen had sensed it. But even a wounded Xiantian master like Chao Jinbiao would not be unable to retaliate if a Fire Lin beast was wreaking havoc and killing members of his family. Moreover, this Fire Lin beast had particularly attacked the members of Chao family in the past, so there was definitely an inside story behind this. Two heroes, I thank you for driving away that Fire Lin beast this time. Chao Jinbiao said. He had certainly seen how Dai Xiaohua and Yi Shiwen had scared away the Fire Lin beast, and one of them was only a master of Hotian realm and was simply not strong enough to defeat a Fire Lin beast. Lord is so polite. Dai Xiaohua waved his hands and said, as if he did not care, "You're welcome." Yi Shiwen said. Chao Jinbiao saw that the two of them had started to talk to each other. He did not stay there for too long, and after talking for a while with other warriors, he finally left. "Hey, I can't believe that it really was the Fire Lin beast." Dai Xiaohua chuckled and said after he saw Chao Jinbiao leaving, "And there's also that blue flaming flower. Gee, I am afraid it's going to get very lively around here." Dai Xiaohua excitedly said, "Didn't I say that blue flaming flower really exists? And the appearance of Fire Lin beast has confirmed my anticipation. I once read a record in a book, and it said that Fire Lin beast was actually associated with a treasure, blue flaming flower. Shortly after the birth of a Fire Lin beast cub, a blue flaming flower would mature on the place of its birth, and so long as the Fire Lin beast cub swallowed this flower, it would be able to have step-by-step growth from infancy to adulthood. Growing period. Yi Shiwen frowned. An infant Fire Lin beast had been so difficult to deal with, not to mention, It was still in the growth period, and no one could guess about the extent of its growth once it reached adulthood. Yi Shiwen felt in his heart that fortunately it was not in the adulthood right now. Otherwise, the only option left for them would be either to escape or face massacre at the hands of this unique demon beast that contained the blood of ancient fire Qilin beast, making it too formidable to deal with. Hey, I'm going to get ready, because it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. Dai Xiaohua cupped his hand into the other across his chest and said, Brother Yi, I have things to do, so I will go ahead first. Looking at the departing figure of Dai Xiaohua, Yi Shiwen did not stay in the Chao family manor for too long and returned back to the inn to start practicing. Yi Shiwen always felt that there was something strange here, that things were not as simple as he had previously thought, and it turned that he was right. Even an infant fire Lin beast was already at the peak of Xiantian first stage and was powerful enough to make everyone run for their lives, and could even kill some Xiantian second stage masters as well. After the growth period of fire Lin beast would complete, it would be difficult to describe how formidable it would become in its adulthood. It could be said that this whole matter had become quite scary. However, no matter what, to enhance one's strength, dealing with all the troubles was the way of the king. Night passed in a blink of an eye, and Yi Shiwen had fully concentrated on practicing. But this night had become a sleepless night for many experts, and the reason behind this was the identity of that monster, being revealed as the formidable Fire Lin beast. The existence of Fire Lin beast and blue flaming fire was enough to attract the attention of many experts. After practicing all night, Yi Shiwen finally stopped and went downstairs only to find it crowded with many new warriors. And compared to the warriors he had seen yesterday, this crowd consisted of a lot of stronger experts of Xiantian realm. All of them were covered with dust, and it seemed that they had apparently rushed to the Keojiaji town after hearing about the Fire Lin beast and blue flaming flower. NT Chapter 70 in few hours. Chapter 70. Chapter 70. Rising winds the entire and was filled with a tense atmosphere. Did you hear that? I heard that even Tianhui City's city guard government has dispatched an expert, and I also heard that a few decades ago that expert was famous by the name of Qin Tai's Ho in the nearby areas. How was he dispatched? Didn't the rumors say that Qin Tai's Ho is already dead? Several years ago, Qin Tai's Ho was a famous Xiantian master in this area, but later, rumors spread out that he died. I did not expect that he would actually conceal himself and work for city guard government. Furthermore, last night, someone saw that Xiaoyang Sec's young master, Wu Xiaoyang, has also entered the town and has obviously also come for the Fire Lin beast. Gee, with the arrival of so many Xiantian masters, I am afraid it's going to be a lot of fun. Yesterday I did not know, but a big personality was present among us. Everyone knows of the Dai family, right? Gee, yesterday, the most powerful expert of the current generation of Dai family, Dai Xiaohua, displayed a superb performance of 100 stages God Fist to a profound level and scared away that Fire Lin beast. Yes, I also heard that a young man went out alone to kill the Fire Lin beast and came back unharmed. Gee, he must also be a famous master. A discussion was open inside the inn, and Yi Shiwen was quietly having breakfast in a corner. No one knew that Yi Shiwen was the young man in their discussions who had alone chased after the Fire Lin beast and had come back alive. But Yi Shiwen had accidentally heard and was surprised to find out that Dai Xiaohua was actually a person of the famous Dai family. Dai family had a well-known influence in the nearby regions and was backed by one of the 4 great sects of Great Yu State, Lu Yunqing. It had a rather special influence among the 4 great sects, and not just because it contained a wide range of martial arts, but also because the ancestors of Lu Yunqing, Lord's family, had founded the Great Yu Empire alongside the first emperor. Also, because of the relationship between the teachings of their forefathers, among the 4 great sects, Lu Yunqing was most intimate with the imperial family. Basically, it could be said that they were deeply interrelated with the royal family. Dai family was a branch of Lu Yunqing, and its huge influence had spread throughout the Great Yu State, like the other 3 respected families, backed by Lu Yunqing. Also, an ancestor of Dai family, was also one of the 4 efficient subordinates of Lu Yunqing and had served under the king during the foundation of the empire. Yesterday, Yi Shiwen could have guessed about Dai Ziawa's background, but his attention was riveted on the Fire Lin beast. And Dai Xiaohua had also made very good impression on him and had proved himself worthy of a close friendship, so he didn't think too much about this matter. But even so, it was nothing, and was he not also the strongest disciple in the younger generation of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school? This time, no matter what, he must fight and strive on, and during the chaos caused by so many powerful masters, he might have a chance to score victory. After a while later, a warrior of the Chao family entered the inn and walked straight to the front of Yi Shiwen and said, "Master Yi, our Chao family's lord has especially sent me to invite you for today's operation of elimination of monster. Are you ready?" And Yi Shiwen nodded. "Then please come with me." Yi Shiwen followed the warrior of Chao family out of the inn, and at this time a buzzing sound of an intense discussion broke out in the inn. Ah! He was that young man named Yi Shiwen, who chased alone after the Fire Lin beast last night. I never imagined him to be so skinny. Stupid! A warrior must not be judged by his appearance. If strength was decided by the physique of a master, then all of the masters would have ironed, tower-like physiques. Yes, yesterday I saw an idiot-provoking Yi Shiwen, but instead he got nailed to the wall with a chopstick. Where does this Yi Shiwen come from? Don't you know? At this time, a traveling merchant opened his mouth and said, "This Yi Shiwen is this year's peerless genius from Yi Yuan School." A genius from Yi Yuan School? That's not right, although Yi Yuan School is somewhat far from here. But I know of Yi Feng, Zhangyang et al. But why have I never heard of Yi Shiwen before? A knowledgeable man asked, "You do not know about it?" The traveling merchant said with a smug look on his face that Yi Shiwen is a rising genius of Yi Yuan School. He won the inner disciples competition and easily became a champion of Yi Yuan School's inner sect. After winning the championship, he again stole the spotlight in the core disciples competition by beheading a Xiantian master. Right now, he is recognized as Yi Yuan School's strongest top disciple in the younger generation. Yi Shiwen did not know that the whole Lin had started to talk about his achievements. He followed the Chao family's warrior and soon arrived at the manor of Chao family. At this time, the manor was already crowded with experts, and all of them were exuding a dangerous aura. However, soon, 2 people caught his attention, and at a corner, an old man was standing under the tree shade with a cold look on his face, and right then, Yi Shiwen also noticed his pitch-black, iron-like hands. Yi Shiwen immediately knew that this guy should be Qin Tai's Ho, although he seemed to be standing still and alone. But no one was daring to approach him because he seemed more like a beast than a martial artist. On the other side, there was an entirely different scene. A youth clad in red robe, holding a sword in his hand, was standing with a smile on his face while surrounded by a multitude of warriors, trying to get close to him. After all, although the influence of Shaoyang sect was not comparable to Yi Yuan School, Dai family, and other great sects, but it was still not a small power because 3 Xiantian masters had assumed personal command over the Shaoyang sect, and it had definitely a powerful influence in this neighborhood that couldn't be ignored. Yi Shiwen also found that the strength level of these warriors was obviously more than the warriors of Qingfeng Mountain area, and was really closer to the warriors found in the central regions of Great Yu State. "Brother Yi!" At this time, the voice of Dai Xiaohua entered Yi Zaiwen's ears. He turned to look and actually saw Dai Xiaohua running towards him. "I never thought that Brother Yi was actually a brilliant student of Yi Yuan School. You tried to conceal this from me, and I feel bitter about it. When did you become so bashful? You and I became good friends without worrying about our background, identity, and status." Yi Shiwen said with a smile, "Ha ha ha. Exactly, you said well, looked pleasing to the eyes of each other. Then you and I became good friends without worrying about our background, identity, and status." Dai Xiaohua laughed and said, "Gentlemen, NT, Chapter 71 will come as a regular release tomorrow. Good night, guys. Laughing face. Chapter 71. Chapter 71. To hate with hands or fists, gentlemen. At this time the lord of Chow family, Chow Jinbiao, came out and cupped one hand and the other across his chest and said, "Today you all have accepted our invitation, and it is great honor for our small town. Lord Chow, don't mention it, because today we have come for the matter related to the Fire Lin beast." A warrior said. Everyone nodded, though this was an operation initiated by the Chow family. But if there were no Fire Lin beast and blue flaming flower in the picture, then who would have come at Chow family's invitation? Good, this monster extermination operation will now officially begin. Everyone please follow us. Chow Jinbiao did not speak much and immediately began the operation. Led by the members of Chow family, the large team of mighty warriors headed towards the place where the underground magma pool was located. Yi Shiwen and Dai Xiaohua were also present in the crowd, and they soon went out of the town. All of these warriors were fast, and within half an hour they arrived under a hillside. This hillside was not high, only about 56 meters, but there was a big hole on its top, and one could see a very dark, bottomless place from above. The magma pool was present beneath it. Yi Shiwen quickly followed the crowd into the cave. After entering the cave, they suddenly felt a heat wave blowing and could even hear the sound of lava rolling and boiling inside cave, accompanied with the bubbling sound. Yi Shiwen reckoned that maybe this magma pool had not formed by an active volcano, but it was hard to say. After all, this could only be calculated based on thousands of years of volcanic action. But now it seemed to have been formed from a volcano, and that must have happened a very long time ago. When the team went deeper into the cave, the temperature of the ground started to increase gradually, and some of the warriors had to wrap their feet with Xinqi. Otherwise, the heat would have burnt their feet. It was getting darker inside the cave, but everyone here was an expert and could clearly see in just a little bit of light. Moreover, as they were approaching the magma pool, the cave had gradually started to illuminate with red light. The team continued to walk in the direction from where the red light was coming, and only after a while they saw a huge magma pool, filled with rolling and bubbling red-hot magma. Everyone clearly saw that right at the center of the magma pool, there was a single blue flaming lotus, and seemed to be camouflaged with its color similar to the color of the surrounding magma. People could not help but be secretly amazed. They never expected to actually see a flower growing in the magma, and it could survive under such a high temperature. That was definitely not ordinary. They saw the entirely crimson-colored blue flaming lotus, and they also clearly saw that it contained lotus seeds as well. Haha, it's actually the blue flaming lotus. A warrior laughed and said. After seeing the flower, the warrior picked up a huge rock and suddenly threw it into the magma pool. Splash! The rock fell into the magma, and that warrior immediately jumped and stepped on that huge rock, and without waiting even for an instant, he suddenly leaped again towards the blue flaming lotus to plunder it. Everyone saw that once that warrior tried to grasp the blue flaming lotus in his hand, he started screaming over and over while his hands had instantly burnt to a terrifying extent. His body fiddled, and as there nothing to support his falling body, he fell directly into the magma and screamed pitifully before completely melting. He really was courting death. Many of the warriors who had fortunately not rushed like him said with a look of disdain on their faces. Yi Shiwen frowned at this troublesome situation. The blue flaming lotus was completed surrounded by red-hot magma, and there were no places to step over to approach it, and looking at the scary level of temperature of the magma, even a foot, properly wrapped in reinforced Xinqi, would instantly melt and disappear once stepped into the magma, which was absolutely terrifying. Let me try. At this time, the young master of Shaoyang sect, Wu Xiaoyang, shouted loudly and instantly threw a red double-edged sword which flew out skimming over the magma pool, and Wu Xiaoyang immediately flew up, and as lithe as the swallow he descended over his sword and rushed towards the blue flaming lotus to snatch it. NT, as lithe as a swallow is an idiom. Shwa! The treasured sword passed swiftly over the blue flaming lotus and instantly cut down the entire flower while flying vigorously through the air. But at this time, when he stretched out his hands to firmly hold the blue flaming lotus, it started to emit buzzing sound after coming in contact with his hands. The ultra-high temperature had started to melt his Zhen Qi, though fortunately he was already a master of the Xiantian realm, and his Xiantian Jin Qi was far more powerful than the Hotian Jin Qi. If a Hotian realm warrior had held this lotus in his hand, then it would have instantly corroded his Jin Qi and burnt his hand. Wu Xiaoyang soon flew skimming over the magma pool to the other side, when at this time he heard a shrill, piercing sound and saw a huge rock flying towards him at a lightning speed. Bang! Wu Xiaoyang struggled to twist his body in the midair and dodge the rock, which then heavily crashed into the side of the cliff and dug a big hole into it. Qin Tai's Ho, you old bastard! How dare you sneak an attack on me? Wu Xiaoyang turned around to look and noticed that it was Qin Tai's Ho who had played this dirty trick on him. Qin Tai's Ho sneered. You better put down the blue flaming lotus. It is not the kind of thing that your Xiaoyang sect should meddle with. Wu Xiaoyang's complexion got unsightly, and he stared fiercely at the Qin Tai's Ho and said, If I say no then your father will lose a son. So I advise you to be a little sensible. Years ago, I made a living by traveling around the country when you were just born. Qin Tai's Ho bluntly said, Old fool, you want to take advantage of your own seniority. So what if you have practiced for decades? Just you wait and see how I cut you today. Wu Xiaoyang had become enraged by Qin Tai's Ho's words. You can try. Qin Tai's Ho sneered and rushed towards Wu Xiaoyang. Old stuff, just drop dead already. Wu Xiaoyang struck his sword, and a terrifying Jianqi instantly rushed out towards Qin Tai's Ho. And Tai's Ho means iron hand. Boom! Qin Tai's Ho used his hands to directly block and scatter the incoming Jianqi. But at this time his figure stagnated, and it seemed as if he would fall into the magma. He immediately shot his palm, releasing a terrifying Qi Jin towards the magma. With the help of the opposite reaction force of this attack, his body suddenly bounced back to go up, and like an eagle, he instantly rushed towards Wu Xiaoyang. And Qi Jin means powerful Qi, even if they had actually come for blue flaming lotus, but this hitting with hands or fists began too quickly, and even the shadow of the fire Lin beast is nowhere to be seen. Dai Xiaohua said with disdain, and to hit with hands or fists means to fight over something. And Chapter 72 will come as a regular release tomorrow. Check donate page for the new release schedule for MGS. Chapter 72. Chapter 72. Chao family's trapped fire Lin beast? Yi Shiwen shook his head because none of these warriors had really come to help Chao family in exterminating this beast. Almost all had come for the blue flaming lotus, and knowing the benefits of this rare treasure, even a devil would be willing to come as well. As a result of battling with Qin Tai's Ho, Wu Xiaoyang had no other choice left but to obediently put down the blue flaming lotus. Snatch the blue flaming lotus. Kill. Seeing the fight of Wu Xiaoyang and Qin Tai's Ho, other warriors suddenly broke out all of a sudden, because they had faced a sudden outbreak of greed in their hearts for the blue flaming lotus. Fighting, killing, all of a sudden, a lot of warriors had already died. Undoubtedly, the greed had manifested itself inside the hearts of these warriors. The aisle to the magma pool was too narrow, and because of that, a lot of warriors had directly fallen into the magma pool and perished instantly. Both Yi Shiwen and Dai Xiaohua were not in a rush like those other warriors, because to them these people were nothing more than a motley crew and were definitely not a cause of concern, even though some Xiantian masters were also present among these warriors. But for these two, their only possible opponents could be Qin Tai's Ho and Wu Xiaoyang, the two Xiantian masters, who were battling each other at the moment. Of course, there was also Chao Jinbiao, the lord of Keojiaji town, and Yi Shiwen had not forgotten that Chao Jinbiao was also a powerful Xiantian master, although injured at the moment. Then suddenly, Yi Shiwen discovered that Chao Jinbiao, who should have been with his team in the middle, had actually disappeared, and this discovery had suddenly made him tensed and surprised at the same time. Chao Jinbiao has disappeared. Yi Shiwen immediately informed Dai Xiaohua. What? Don't tell me he got killed by some warrior. Dai Xiaohua said. No, he disappeared only a moment ago, and I also can't see the members of Chao family. Yi Shiwen said. After listening to what Yi Shiwen had just said, Dai Xiaohua also reacted immediately, because it was really true that the members of Chao family who were present here only a moment ago had suddenly disappeared. This is a problem. Dai Xiaohua frowned and said, because the Chao family had used this chaotic situation to their advantage. Confusion, chaos. The crowd of warriors had already rushed to the other side of the magma pool, leaving only Dai Xiaohua and Yi Shiwen behind. Yi Shiwen saw a man rushing to grab the blue flaming lotus. But that man was shot by many concealed weapons, turning his body look like that of a hedgehog. However, before long, everyone started fighting with each other while striving to be first and fearing to be last. NT, striving to be first and fearing to be last, idiom, means outdoing one another. When Yi Shiwen was trying to think about his next course of action, suddenly the whole magma boiled up and a huge shadow jumped out from the magma and swooped down towards the group of warriors who were fighting with each other until now, and several warriors didn't have enough time to dodge and were instantly killed. Fire Lin Beast. Everyone was stunned after the sudden appearance of Fire Lin Beast. 100 stages God Fist. Dai Xiaohua shouted and flew towards the beast. His fierce punch shot out the terrifying Quan Jin. NT. Quan Jin is the power present in his fist. Boom! The Quan Jin fiercely collided with the body of Fire Lin Beast, but its grandiose stature moved only a bit. Yi Shiwen also didn't wait and immediately flew across the entire magma pool, then took out his blade and severely chopped out towards the Fire Lin Beast. Fire Lin Beast screamed, and several of its scales immediately shattered. Fire Lin Beast did not stop, but it immediately pounced towards the blue flaming flower. You beast! Wu Xiaoyang shouted loudly, and his sword danced out, releasing a long, thick sword key, which instantly plugged into the front of the Fire Lin Beast. Qin Tai's Ho also didn't wait, and his fist rumbled, producing an air-crackling sound, and the profound skill of Qin Tai's Ho directly struck the body of Fire Lin Beast, and it bellowed and rolled to the side. But the Fire Lin Beast did not give up. It immediately stood up and rolled to the side of Blue Flaming Lotus and bit off a major part of the lotus and swallowed it. You filthy beast! At this time the people were angry, seeing that the Fire Lin Beast had actually eaten half of the Blue Flaming Lotus. The Fire Lin Beast lifted its face upward and gave out a loud roar and rushed towards a group of Hotian-level warriors, and almost in an instant, these Hotian-level warriors had been totally obliterated. Kill! Ha ha ha! Kill them for me! At this time, everyone heard a loud battle cry coming from a distant place, but this voice was familiar to Yi Shiwen. Yes, it was the voice of Chao Jinbiao, Lord of Keojiaji Town. Everyone saw Chao Jinbiao and 2 other experts walking with him towards the magma pool from far away. These 2 experts were actually Xiantian-level masters. One was a middle-aged man who looked smaller than Chao Jinbiao, and another was a skinny old man. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized these 2 experts, as someone from the Chao family had mentioned about them earlier to Yi Shiwen. These 2 were the major pillars that supported the Chao family on their shoulders. The middle-aged man was the younger brother Chao Jinbiao, called Chao Jinshui, while the old man was an elder of Keojiaji Town, called Chao Xing. No one had expected to find so many Xiantian masters in a small town like Keojiaji. Lord Chao, what is the meaning of this? Qin Tai's Ho asked. Ha ha ha, of course, this is to kill you all. Today you all must die. A warrior of Chao family laughed and said, You dare to set me up? Are you not afraid of our punitive army? Qin Tai's Ho said in a cold voice, Do you think you can escape? You are only the first wave of Xiantian masters that we have attracted so far, and then later more will come, and after beheading all of the Xiantian masters of the nearby areas, our Chao family will gain the biggest influence in this locality. A warrior of the Chao family said, And who will know that we were behind this? All they will know that You all died at the hands of the Fire Lin beast." So, this Fire Lin beast, Dai Zaiwa's complexion immediately paled. "Yes, so you finally realized. In order to subdue this beast, we had to put a lot of efforts." The warrior laughed and said. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. This explained why Chao Jinbiao's breath was unstable. So he had actually been injured while taming this Fire Lin beast. In other words, Chao family really wanted to attract great masters of Xiaoyang sect and Tianhui town, while Yi Shiwen as well as Dai Xiaohua were also their targets. "You talk too much." Chao Jinshui shouted and said, "Kill them all, and once we are done with them, our Chao family would gain the top influence in this area." "Kill! Kill!" Chao family's men gave out a battle cry. While the complexion of those who had been invited by the Chao family had considerably paled, but now this had become a matter of life and death for them, and they immediately clashed with the members of the Chao family, and a bloody war started in the cave. Yi Shiwen suddenly moved quickly, and in an instant he was next to the blue flaming lotus. He bent down and caught the root of the blue flaming lotus. Although the major part of the lotus had been eaten by the Fire Lin beast, but even just the root was very beneficial. But before Yi Shiwen could even think, a huge shadow leaped towards him and mercilessly hit Yi Shiwen and sent him flying. Splash! Yi Shiwen fell into the magma pool. NT, this chapter is a regular release. Chapter 73 will come as a bonus chapter in few hours. Chapter 73. NT? Thanks to Anonymous UK and Thomas Beauvisage France for sponsoring this chapter. Chapter 73. Breaking through to the Xiantian realm, Brother Yi. Dai Xiaohua said anxiously, "You filthy beast." Dai Xiaohua had become extremely furious when he saw Yi Shiwen being pushed into the magma pool without any chance to dodge an attack from the Fire Lin beast. He furiously shot out 100 stages, God, fist at the beast, and it suddenly screamed. His Quan Jin broke through the layers of scales and blasted into its body under the scales. Dai Zaiwa's Xiantian level strength had reached its peak, caused by his anger for the beast, and the tyrannical power of his fist technique had truly manifested itself. However, at this time, Dai Xiaohua was unable to chase and kill the Fire Lin beast, because Chao Jinbiao and his family had started an onslaught on them, and Lord Chao Jinbiao was a terrifying Xiantian master. So Dai Xiaohua had to pay attention to them as well. 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family were already well prepared to obstruct Dai Xiaohua, Qin Taizhou, and Wu Xiaoyang. But Dai Xiaohua was not afraid of these 3 Xiantian masters of the Chao family. But at present, the most terrifying was the fact that Fire Lin beast had already swallowed a major part of the blue flaming lotus and had now entered into transformation period. If this situation dragged on a little longer and the beast was not killed before the completion of its transformation, then no one would survive. The complexion of Dai Xiaohua, Chen Taizhou, and Wu Xiaoyang had suddenly paled because they never thought that Chao family would actually prepare such a vicious trap. "When I go out, I will let my father take care of you Chao family bastards." Wu Xiaoyang gritted his teeth and said in a cold voice, "Well, that is if you get a chance to go out." Wu Xiaoyang's opponent Chao Jinshui sneered and said. At the same time, the aura of Fire Lin beast had started to increase rapidly, and with a loud bang, it suddenly broke through the peak of Xiantian first stage and entered into the Xiantian second stage. However, its aura continued to rise and didn't stop. "Run, we will make a run for it, and as long as there is one of us who manages to escape from this massacre, Chao family will be exterminated." Qin Taizhou finally shouted these words to collaborate with the 2 Xiantian masters, Dai Xiaohua and Wu Xiaoyang. As for those other warriors, they were like ants in his eyes, and he simply did not care about them. "Run, where will you run to?" Chao Jinbiao laughed and said, "The strength of the Fire Lin beast had already increased dramatically. Its loud roars were echoing in the cave, and its eyes had become blood red, full of blood and violence, and its gigantic body suddenly leaped towards Qin Taizhou. After entering into the Xiantian second stage, the The strength of the Fire Lin beast had increased to a terrifying level, and with just a swoop, it had knocked down Qin Tai's Ho on the ground. "Die, you filthy beast!" Qin Tai's Ho shouted loudly, and his pitch-black palm instantly shot out, containing a terrifying strength which caused a loud air explosion. Bang! The Fire Lin beast directly lifted up its claw and fiercely stepped upon his hand. Kara! With a sound of breaking bones, the bones inside Chen Tai's house hand immediately shattered after the Fire Lin beast had directly stepped on his hand. Chen Tai's Ho screamed in a pitiful voice because its foot was extremely heavy. The beast again stepped on his breastbone and smashed it. Ah! Chen Tai's Ho screamed, but right then, a raging fire suddenly discharged out from the body of Fire Lin beast and instantly corroded the Xiantian Jin Qi that was wrapped around his body and then burnt him to cinders. Ha ha ha! Today no one's going anywhere. Chao Xing and the Fire Lin beast rushed towards Wu Xiaoyang and Dai Xiaohua, respectively. Suddenly, the whole magma pool began to boil up, and an incredibly terrifying aura flushed out of the magma pool, and an innumerable influx of frenzied Lingqi formed a huge bubble in the magma. The complexion of all the Xiantian masters present there immediately turned pale. They were all familiar with this scene because this was a breakthrough into the Xiantian realm. The complexion of the people from Chao family especially became pale because they couldn't comprehend that how could someone break through to the Xiantian realm inside the magma. Dai Xiaohua was delighted, and he seemed to have understood what was happening. "Hurry up, kill them all!" Chao Jinbiao immediately shouted. Boom! Before they could start the massacre, a loud explosion sound came from the magma, and a large amount of magma spattered in all directions. Except the Fire Lin beast, everyone else quickly used all their might to jump back and escape from the flying magma. They absolutely could not afford to touch it, otherwise they would be roasted alive. A figure covered in red-hot magma jumped out from the magma, and the first one to react was the Fire Lin beast, which immediately pounced towards that figure with its blood-red eyes, full of hatred, looking at that figure. But the Fire Lin beast actually saw an incomparably radiant, red-hot, long blade flashing. The long blade instantly pierced through the air and maliciously chopped into its body. Bang! The whole cave echoed with a loud sound of metal clash, and in the very next instant, the Fire Lin beast screamed and its gigantic body directly flew far away by this blade attack. There was a huge crack on the red scales covering its body, and the blood was gushing out of the wound. This was the first time someone had cut open its scales to this extent. People were giving dumbfounded looks to that person's figure standing in the midair. They couldn't believe their eyes that in an instant the tables had turned in their favor, and the beast on which the Chao family was putting its bet had actually been injured and sent flying by a single blade attack. It was hard for people to accept this favorable turn of events in such a short time. At this time, the shadow descended from the sky and landed on one side of the magma pool. "Brother Yi, you're all right," Dai Xiaohua said with a look of surprise on his face. Wu Xiaoyang was also surprised and looked at Yi Shiwen, although he and Yi Shiwen were unfamiliar. But this time the unexpected appearance of Yi Shiwen was more like reinforcement to their side. Yi Shiwen nodded towards the two men with a blade in his hand and stared coldly towards the people of Chao family. For Yi Shiwen, only he himself knew about the life and death experience that he had just gone through, and his survival could be said as a narrow escape. Falling into magma pool implied certain death. The Hotian Jin Qi simply couldn't stop the invasion of magma, and even Xiantian Jin Qi would burn up quickly, so there was no way to continue to resist it. So, when he had fallen into the magma, he decided to swallow the root of blue flaming lotus at this critical moment, and along with it, he also took out the Xiantian pellet and began to forcefully impact on his inner state in order to enter into the Xiantian realm. Only after the impact to his innate state, an endless amount of Xiantian Jin Qi generated inside his body, and he was able to escape. Yi Shiwen had no other ways to escape from the magma, and without a breakthrough, he would have burned inside the magma. But fortunately, heavens would not fail a man. Although he had only swallowed the root of blue flaming lotus, but his body had still gained the fire spirit characteristics. His anti-fire resistance had greatly enhanced, and this was the reason why the magma had not caused any injuries to his body, and he had been able to stay in the magma for so long without getting burnt. Moreover, he also regarded this as a blessing in disguise, because from now on, flames would not be able to burn him due to greatly increased resistance to fire. Also, he would be able to practice a fire attribute power technique and would gain twice the result with half the effort. This was the motive that had attracted all the warriors to come here. NT, on Saturday I will prepare a grand release of chapters in the range of minimum 3 and can go up to 5 chapters, depending on the donations. Enjoy! Chapter 74. NT, thanks to Sai Paklupti, UK, Alexander Engblom, Sweden, Galen Kellner, US, Thomas Metzger, Pittsburgh, Elon Jones, Brooklyn, New York, James Pape, Arizona, Anonymous, Norway, Amir, Israel, for sponsoring the grand release of chapters 74, 75, 76, and 77. Chapter 74. All killed. This was the most important characteristic of blue flaming lotus that had attracted all the warriors to rush here. Because of the strong fire-resistant properties of the blue flaming lotus, Yi Shiwen had been able to break through to the Xiantian realm while he was still inside the magma pool. Inside the magma, Yi Shiwen simply did not have any time to think, and his only chance of survival relied on having a breakthrough as soon as possible. After taking the Xiantian pellet, Yi Shiwen had been able to have a quick and successful breakthrough compared to the other masters, and this could be described as a narrow escape. When he had fallen into the magma pool, if his Xiantian Jin Qi had been completely consumed even a moment before he actually swallowed the blue flaming lotus, then he would have instantly burned in the magma before gaining the fire-resistant ability from the lotus. However, after experiencing a narrow escape from death, it was not so that he didn't get any benefits from this. In his body, 50% of the Hotian Jin Qi had transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, and this transformation was comparable to the degree of transformation attained by ordinary experts of the Xiantian third stage. Of course, his current transformation was still not comparable to the elite masters of Xiantian third stage, who had already transformed 60% of their Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. After entering into the Xiantian realm, Yi Zaiwen's strength had also reached all the way up to the strength of 11 dragons. Also, speaking of the martial arts techniques, although he knew a lot of Xiantian level martial arts techniques, but had only mastered to an extent of advanced power technique and had only scratched the surface of the real extent related to the Xiantian power techniques. It could be said that he had obtained a superficial knowledge as the insights about these Xiantian power techniques. Although 50% of his Jin Qi had already transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, but there was still a small gap between him and other Xiantian masters, who had also transformed 50% of their Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. However, dealing with the Fire Lin beast, which had just entered into the Xiantian second stage, was a child's play for Yi Shiwen. And now that Yi Shiwen had entered into the Xiantian realm, once he would start practicing his Xiantian level power techniques, then he would be able to fight on equal terms with the ordinary masters of the Xiantian third stage. However, right now he was still just a master of the Xiantian first stage, who had still not grasped his martial arts technique to the extent of Xiantian level. You actually did not die," Chao Jinshui said with an astonished look in his eyes. "Thanks to you, I'm not dead." Yi Shiwen, with a calm smile on his face, said, "And I'm afraid that today your Chao family will be exterminated." "You little bastard, how dare you threaten me?" Chao Jinshui roared loudly. "Today I'll kill you." Chao Jinshui roared and rushed towards Yi Shiwen and shot both his palms in succession, releasing a terrifying Jin Qi, which endlessly stirred the air in the surrounding. Overconfident, Yi Shiwen sneered and instantly shot rushing Thunder Hand, although Rushing Thunder Hand was just a lower-level power technique. But in the hands of Yi Shiwen, it had reached a profound level, and even if he used to mainly practice Cold Moon Beheader, but he had not put down the Rushing Thunder Hand because it was simple, quite handy, powerful, and with the conversion of half of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi, and accompanied with the strength of 11 dragons. How could a Xiantian expert like Chao Jinshui, who had transformed only 10% of this Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi, be his opponent? Boom! Yi Zaiwen's palm rumbled and released an intermittent thunderous explosion, sound which echoed throughout the cave. Bang! With a heart-shaking breaking sound, all of the bones in Chao Jinshui's arm had been instantly broken under the terrifying strength of 11 dragons, present in Yi Zaiwen's attack that had instantly turned the bones present in Chao Jinshui's arm into powder. Ah! Chao Jinshui screamed while his body had been sent flying upside down by the terrifying force present in Yi Zaiwen's attack that had also injured his internal organs. How? How is this possible? Everyone was stunned after watching this scene, because no one thought that a Xiantian master like Chao Jinshui would be unable to stop even a single palm attack from Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen had just now entered into the Xiantian realm, then how had his strength increased so much? However, it was obvious that Yi Shiwen did not intend to show mercy on him. His long blade instantly chopped out a crescent-shaped bladiki towards Chao Jinshui and split him in half in the midair. Jinshui! Chao Jinbiao indignantly roared, "I'll kill you!" Seeing his younger brother getting killed right in front of his eyes, it seemed as if Chao Jinbiao had become totally insane and frantic and suddenly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. However, at this time, the Fire Lin beast also rushed towards Yi Shiwen and spit out high-temperature flames from its mouth at him. From the other side, Chao Xing also rushed towards Yi Shiwen. They must kill Yi Shiwen, because if they did not kill him, then the news about their conspiracy would leak out and numerous angry forces would come to destroy Chao family. Yi Shiwen sneered and took out his long blade, and in just a step, his figure suddenly disappeared. Now that he had become a Xiantian master, not only just half of his Jin Qi had transformed into the Xiantian Jin Qi, but his strength and speed had also progressed by leaps and bounds. Breaking through to the Xiantian realm could be considered as the first big transformation for a martial artist, and it caused a tremendous change in the physical body as well. Shua! Yi Shiwen instantly appeared in front of the Fire Lin beast, then stretched out his left hand and directly squeezed the hot flames spit out by the Fire Lin beast, and his right fist instantly punched out, with the Xiantian Jin Qi attached to the top of the fist, and instantly condensed into a terrifying Quan Jin and fiercely smashed into its head. Although the speed of Fire Lin beast was very fast from the start, and after consuming the blue flaming lotus, its speed had increased even further, but it still could not avoid Yi Zaiwen's fist. Bang! The scales on the face of the Fire Lin beast had immediately shattered by Yi Zaiwen's punch. Boom! The gigantic body of the Fire Lin beast flew up again and severely hit at the top of a rock, generating a tremendous impulse which directly crushed its bones. It rolled onto one side while wailing incessantly. Right then, while Yi Zaiwen's attention was diverted towards the beast, Chao Jinbiao thought of this as an opportunity, and his figure suddenly appeared behind Yi Shiwen with a trace of madness in his eyes. Chao Jinbiao was carrying a spear, which instantly shot out like a shadow of a dragon, suffused with a terrifying undulation, and instantly advanced towards Yi Shiwen. Smack! It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had eyes on his back as well. He instantly turned around and grabbed the spear with one hand. Bang! After catching the spear so effortlessly, Yi Shiwen took a step and instantly appeared in front of Chao Jinbiao and slapped a palm on his chest. Bang! Chao Jinbiao solidly suffered a direct hit on his chest from Yi Zaiwen's palm, but he didn't possess the incredible defense of the Fire Lin beast, and the strength of 11 dragons directly blasted into his chest and instantly turned his internal organs into mincemeat. He died a violent death in a flash. It took a long time to explain all of this, But it had all happened very fast. And at this time, the last remaining Xiantian master of the Chao family, Chao Xing, had become terrified of Yi Shiwen after he had seen the two other Xiantian masters of his family getting killed so easily at the hands of a Yi Shiwen, who had just entered into the Xiantian realm. This was something incomprehensible to him. However, at this time, it was too late to escape. Yi Shiwen instantly threw the spear with such an incredible strength that it immediately reached Chao Xing and pierced his body, and the immense force present in Yi Zaiwen's throw directly carried Chao Xing, along with the spear, into the magma, where he instantly burned to charcoal. Chapter 75. NT. Thanks to Cy Pucklupty, UK, Alexander Engblom, Sweden, Galen Kellner, US, Thomas Metzger, Pittsburgh, Elon Jones, Brooklyn, New York, James Pape, Arizona, Anonymous, Norway, Amir, Israel, for sponsoring the grand release of chapters 74, 75, 76, and 77. Chapter 75. Yuan Main Sect in a very short period of time. The Fire Lin beast had been crippled, and the three Xiantian masters of the Chao family had all been killed single-handedly by Yi Shiwen. The sudden turn of events had left all of the warriors dumbstruck. But at this time, those warriors realized that their lives had already been saved by Yi Shiwen and shouted in succession out of happiness, "Kill these Chao family bastards! They actually conspired to kill us! Kill them all! I will completely eradicate Chao family." After facing such a life and death situation, now, many warriors had survived because of the unexpected appearance of Yi Shiwen, and this had boosted their morale. They were in high spirits, and without wasting any time, they roared and rushed towards the warriors of the Chao family, who were still mourning the deaths of their strongest experts. Yi Shiwen did not say anything and arrived at the side of Fire Lin Beast and lifted his blade in a stance. The Fire Lin Beast had been crippled by a punch from Yi Shiwen and couldn't even move. Yi Shiwen finally stabbed his blade into its body and put it out of its miseries. Yi Shiwen received the corpse of Fire Lin Beast in his storage ring, as it had the blood of Fire Qilin in its body, and its whole body could be considered as a treasure, even though it had not fully matured before dying. However, if it had completely transformed into a fully grown Fire Lin Beast, then Yi Shiwen would have been unable to deal with it. When it had swallowed the blue flaming lotus, it had then entered into the growth period of rapid transformation, and if given enough time, it could have even reached the Xiantian 6th stage in just 1 year. Fire Lin Beast had just entered the growth period, and after fully maturing, it would have become an absolutely terrifying demon beast in this locality and would have brought disaster on everyone. But fortunately, before it could fully mature, it had been killed by Yi Shiwen. "Brother Yi, I didn't expect you to be all right." Dai Xiaohua came up and said, about those Hotian realm warriors of the Chao family, he simply didn't care because this incident had come to a closure along with deaths of the three Xiantian masters of the Chao family and Fire Lin Beast, and killing these warriors of the Hotian realm would only be a waste of time. Although Chao family was on the verge of complete extinction, but those warriors were quite furious for being conspired against by the Chao family because they could have lost their lives pointlessly. Both sides had started to fight, but soon Wu Xiaoyang also joined the battle, and once a Xiantian master like him joined the fray, immediately this fight had turned into a one-sided massacre, and soon Chao family warriors had been completely massacred. "Brother Yi, thanks for saving our lives today, and if I ever got an opportunity in the future, I would certainly return the favor." Wu Xiaoyang said, "I am going back and reveal this news to the public. Goodbye." Yi Shiwen nodded. After a while, everyone had left, leaving only Yi Shiwen and Dai Xiaohua behind in the cave, because those warriors had faced such a life-threatening experience in this cave and were reluctant to stay here. "Brother Yi, it is needless to say that I will return the favor, and if you ever need help with something, come find me in the Yunqing city," Dai Xiaohua said while laughing. Yi Shiwen nodded, and though Dai Xiaohua had not said something pleasant to hear, but after spending time with him, Yi Shiwen had finally come to understand his character. Yi Shiwen knew that the words he just said seemed fancy, but they still were a lot more meaningful. Dai Xiaohua was still young and was an outstanding genius who had already entered the Xiantian realm. So how could he possibly not enter the city of Yuncheng, which was a necessity for all the disciples of Dai family sect? I think we will soon also be able to meet again. Dai Xiaohua laughed. Looking at Brother Yes Talent, you would certainly be going to the Yuan main sect, and I am sure that very soon you will become an outstanding disciple of the Yuan main sect, and when the time comes, we should be able to meet again in the meeting of the warriors of 4 great sects. Meeting of the warriors of 4 great sects? Yi Shiwen asked. Brother Yi, you don't know that the 4 great sects of our Yu state jointly holds the meeting of outstanding warriors, including some well-known figures coming from all over Great Yu State. Dai Xiaohua said, sometimes the masters of the royal family also join in. In short, the competition is going to be very fierce, but I think the strength of Brother Yi is more than enough, and standing out won't be an issue for you. Yi Shiwen did not ask anything more because, right now, he had not even entered into the main sect, so there were a lot of things that he still did not know about. But once he entered into the main sect, then these things won't remain hidden from his eyes, and he would eventually come to know about them. Then I'll say goodbye. I must rush toward Yuncheng City. This time I secretly ran out on my own and did not go along with my team. Dai Xiaohua said, the 4 big sects of the Great Yu State were located at the 4 corners of the state, each in the east, west, north, and south direction, which worked as the 4 gateways and supported the state. Yuan main sect was located in the west direction, and Qingfeng Mountains Yuan School was located further in the southwest, although separated by a large distance. But one could travel this distance in one day by riding a flight-type demon beast. But Yuncheng City was located in the northern part of Great Yu State, and even by riding on a flight-type demon beast, it would take half a month time. Therefore, this time, Dai Xiaohua was in a lot of tension compared to Yi Shiwen. And I'm sure we'll meet again someday. Yi Shiwen nodded. After bidding farewell to Dai Xiaohua, Yi Shiwen began to travel alone. 2 months' time passed in a blink of an eye. The large entrance to the Yuan main sect was located in the western part of Yu State, and when Yi Shiwen arrived there, he saw that it was completely bustling with people who had arrived from more than 100 sub-schools. These people were actually the geniuses from all over the Yu State, as well as many visitors who had come along with them. And like Yi Shiwen, they had come to enter into the Yuan main sect. So this is the Yuan main sect, where the genius disciples from various Yuan sub-schools come to study. Yi Shiwen looked from afar and saw dozens of miles away an endless mountain range of 10 huge mountains that looked like the mountains of immortals and resembled a sacred mountainous region. Each and every one of those mountain peaks were so high as if they were piercing the sky itself, covered with clouds and mist curling around the mountains. Countless waterfalls were traversing horizontally down those mountains, and it appeared as if the galaxies were falling from the 7th heaven. Among these endless mountains, a palace could be seen, rising steeply from the level ground, and well blended with the surrounding environment, which seemed to resemble the nature itself. The most spectacular thing was that in the depth of the mountain range, several palaces could be seen in a row, visibly floating above the tall peaks, and the whole scenery looked like a city in the mountains. Yi Shiwen was amazed at the scene which had unfolded in front of him. It clearly resembled a paradise and compared with the landscape and environment present in the Yuan main sect. Qingfeng Mountain's environment was nothing, and that was the reason why many experts would rather come to these great sects. Coming to the main sect was similar to living in a paradise on the earth, which was going to be a unique experience for Yi Shiwen, who had come from a different world. Even from dozens of miles away, Yi Shiwen could clearly feel the intermittent waves of strong and rich ling qi present in the wind, which was very important for cultivating. With each blow of air on his face and with each breath he took, he would feel 100 vessels opening inside his body, giving a comfortable feeling to him. Yi Shiwen didn't know that how many spiritual veins had been buried in these mountains by the main sect to make the air so rich in ling qi. If practiced here, then he would certainly gain twice the result with half the effort. Chapter 76. NT. Thanks to Cy Pucklupty, UK, Alexander Engblom, Sweden, Galen Kellner, US, Thomas Metzger, Pittsburgh, Elon Jones, Brooklyn, New York, James Pape, Arizona, Anonymous, Norway, Amir, Israel, for sponsoring the grand release of chapters 74, 75, 76, and 77. Chapter 76, Senior Disciple Sure. No wonder that Main Sect had chosen such a place as its base, because even with low qualifications and talent, it was possible to enter into the Sciention realm with little practice. Moreover, the disciples of Yuan subschools, although one could not say that all were peerless geniuses, but their qualifications were still not so bad. And once the disciples of the Hotian ninth stage would enter into the Main Sect, they would be able to break through to the Sciention realm within few years. If practiced in the environment of subschools, then they would be able to step into the Sciention realm by the time they reach the age of 30 years old. Resources and environment of the subschools and Main Sect varied greatly, although the difference was only a few years to enter into the Sciention realm. But practicing for entering into the Sciention realm inside the Main Sect and practicing for the same without entering the Main Sect were not the same things. The difference was only a few years, but the gap between them was already very big, because without competition and proper environment for cultivation, there was a high possibility for this gap to widen. Those who had already entered the Sciention realm before entering into the Main Sect were the so-called seed disciples, who would immediately receive various resources from the Yuan Main Sect to ensure that they should be able to have a rapid increase in their cultivation in a short time. This was also the biggest attraction for all of the geniuses, and many schools would send their genius disciples to practice in the Main Sect. And since these disciples were already considered geniuses from their respective schools, and once they would practice in the favorable environment of the Main Sect, then they would definitely get stronger. That is why the disciples passing out of the Main Sect or other four big sects of the Great Yu State were never weak. Yi Shiwen had some mixed feelings about this because he had just arrived at the Main Sect and he didn't know about the strength level of other geniuses who had also come this year, and he also didn't know how much they had already practiced and how much they would progress after practicing in the favorable environment of Main Sect. He knew that things were going to be tough from this point onwards, and he needed to work hard to surpass others. After thinking about it, Yi Shiwen felt a kind of passionate feeling building inside his heart, because now these formidable opponents would become a driving force for his cultivation. However, right now, the first thing to do was to find the people of the Qingfeng Mountains Yuan School. Suddenly, from the sky, a giant demon bird descended down, and standing on its top was a decent-looking man. He smiled towards Yi Shiwen and said, "Younger brother, you should be this year's new disciple from a subschool, right?" "I am." Yi Shiwen nodded. "Brother is very talented, so young, and you are already a master of the Sciention realm, and presumably also a seed disciple." The man laughed and said, "My name is Sher-Yi, and I am an inner disciple." "Greeting, brother Sher-Yi, I am Yi Shiwen." Yi Shiwen said, and he could easily see through the depth of Sher-Yi's breath and knew that he was completely harmless, but his cultivation had already reached a very high level because, unlike other Sciention experts, who also contained a part of non-converted Hotian Jin Qi in their bodies, his breath was already complete and rich, as if he had already become one with the nature. Yi Shiwen concluded that Sher-Yi was definitely a master of Sciention 5th stage, and he could be among the top inner disciples. Of course, there was no comparison between the strength of core disciples of the Main Sect and the core disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain, because the core disciples from the Main Sect could go to the sub-schools and become their head or sovereign. This was the difference. "Brother Yi, do you want to go inside?" "Sure," Yi said. "If you want, you may come up and I'll give you a ride." "It is greatly appreciated, brother. I am a disciple of the Qingfeng Mountains Yuan School, and I don't know where they are because I did not come along with them." Yi Shiwen said, "I know where people from different sub-schools live. Come on, I'll take you there." Sher-Yi said, "Thank you." Yi Shiwen jumped upon the back of the demon bird, and although he had not ridden demon birds, but he knew about how to do it. He immediately concentrated an influx of Zhen Qi at the soles of his feet and firmly absorbed on the demon bird's back. Go! Shi shouted, and the demon bird quickly moved, waving its huge wings, flying into the clouds. Suddenly Yishuan felt like the wind was blowing and stinging on his skin like blades made of air. But fortunately, Yishuan had covered his whole body with Xiantian Jinqi, and therefore did not feel anything. This demon bird was so fast that, in a moment, they had already reached the inner parts of the Yi Yuan main sect, and he could not help but feel amazed at the beauty of this place and sighed with emotion. After careful examination, he saw tens of mountain peaks that were so high that the several palaces atop these peaks looked like starry sky from below. After Shi's explanation, Yishuan found out that these 10 enormous peaks represented 10 branch veins of the Yi Yuan school, and legend said that in the past, the founder of the Yi Yuan school had handed over these 10 branch veins to 10 of his best disciples. The first 10 mountain peaks were now governed by people of the Yi Yuan school, holding the reins of the main sect. Meanwhile, their strength was also unpredictable, and all of them were Zhendao experts, possessing strengths even more terrifying than the masters of the Xiantian realm, and to what extent, even Shi didn't know. Yishuan knew that Zhendao masters were considered the authentic disciples of the Yi Yuan main sect, and they also possessed terrifying strength, capable enough to kill any experts of the Xiantian realm easily. Even in such a big influential sect like the Yi Yuan main sect, there were only around 100 Zhendao experts. Besides first 10 leaders and those other Zhendao disciples in the Yi Yuan school, the disciples were divided into inner sect disciples, core disciples, and outer sect disciples. With the vast resources offered by the Yi Yuan main sect to the inner sect disciples, they would be able to break into the Xiantian realm in just few years, so the number of inner sect disciples was always more compared to that of outer sect disciples. In fact, number of inner sect disciples would be the largest of about 50,000, followed by core sect disciples and least number of outer sect disciples. Yishuan had gained a direct insight into the true strength of Yi Yuan main sect, because having thousands of Xiantian warriors was really incredible for a sect. Shi told Yishuan that the new disciples from the sub-schools would go through the examination, and there it will be decided which peak they would go to. And during the examination, if one was to give an outstanding performance, then there was a chance to get selected to study under the elder, which was a great honor for the disciple, and his status would also increase. In a very short span of time, the demon bird flew closer to the settlements of the disciples. "NT, I will release Chapter 77 in few hours." Chapter 77. NT. Thanks to Sai Paklupti, UK, Alexander Engblom, Sweden, Galen Kellner, US, Thomas Metzger, Pittsburgh, Elon Jones, Brooklyn, New York, James Pape, Arizona, Anonymous, Norway, Amir, Israel, for sponsoring the grand release of Chapters 74, 75, 76, and 77. Chapter 77, Bullying. This is the courtyard for disciple of Qingfeng Mountains, Yi Yuan School. I will leave you here. The wings of the demon bird closed down, and it descended on a mountain peak. This mountain peak was located in the more remote area, but several buildings were present on it. The disciples of other sub-schools were also concentrated on several other mountain peaks, although somewhat far away in the remote areas because main sect valued strength, and it was obvious that disciples from the sub-school would be weaker compared to disciples of the main sect. "Thank you." Yishuan climbed up the stairs and quickly arrived at the hillside where the courtyard for disciples of Qingfeng Mountains Yi Yuan School was located. Yishuan had not reached the top yet when he heard a loud voice. "How can you do this? This is our Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School's courtyard. You cannot just barge in and occupy our place." Yishuan heard the voice of the only female top-core disciple of Qingfeng Mountains Yi Yuan School, Qian Wanru. "Hey, why not? We have more people and you have so few, a total of only 20. So what if we want to occupy your courtyard? You have come from the small countryside school and you don't need this much space, But this time, our Shaoyang Yi Yuan school has sent 50 people, so you separate out 2/3 of this courtyard and give it to us. This is not right because this is the place where all of our forefathers from Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School once lived and practiced. Why must we give this to you? I tell you what, let's decide with our strengths. An arrogant voice resounded in the courtyard. Yi Shiwen rapidly climbed up the steps, and after reaching the top, he soon saw a group of approximately 30 young people surrounding the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School in the courtyard. Shaoyang Yuan School. Yi Shiwen frowned at the name of this school. This name for Yi Shiwen was definitely not strange because Shaoyang Yuan School and Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School had been hostile towards each other for God knows how many years. This enmity between these two sub-schools started in the ancient era, and no one knew the reason behind it. However, after so many years of holding grudges and hatred towards each other, there was nothing that could be done to stop this clash between the two sub-schools. Two groups were confronting each other where one belonged to the Qingfeng Mountain, about 20 in number, and all over the middle Hotian 9th stage, and were being led by Zhang Yang, Qian Wanru, and Wu Hao. Among them, Zhang Yang had already entered into the Xiantian realm and had transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi, while Qian Wanru and Wu Hao had both reached the peak of Hotian 9th stage. The group on the other side belonged to the Shaoyang Yuan School, headed by a young guy who currently had a sneer on his face. He was also a Xiantian first stage master, but with his 20% Jin Qi already transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi, he was a lot stronger than Zhang Yang. Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School this year's core disciples really had relatively mediocre strength. Hua Cheng, do not go too far with the bullying. At this time, Wu Hao spoke. Bullying? You call that bullying, haha. A moment ago, that guy called Yi Feng, who was supposed to be the most powerful disciple from your school, easily collapsed in front of me. He is lucky that I almost stopped myself from wasting his cultivation. Hua Cheng said with a complacent smile on his face. In the back of the crowd, Yi Feng's complexion suddenly changed. So, that was the reason why Yi Shiwen had not seen him in the crowd, because he had already been wounded. Yi Zaiwen's complexion suddenly changed. In this entire world, he loved his family the most, and someone had dared to touch a member of his family, and by doing so, he had also invited the wrath of the emperor. Fuck off! Yi Shiwen shouted. Yi Zaiwen's shout had immediately caused commotion among the disciples of the Shaoyang Yuan School when they saw a 17-year-old boy was ferociously looking at them. Yi Shiwen. When Zhang Yang saw Yi Shiwen, a sudden happiness bloomed on his face. It's Brother Yi. Brother Yi. All of the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School had an expression of surprise on their faces when they suddenly saw Yi Shiwen, and now they felt relaxed because now they knew that they had survived this crisis, because in the present situation, even Zhang Yang and Yi Feng, the two Xiantian masters, had been unable to do anything, but in their hearts, they had already accepted Yi Shiwen as their leader. After all, months ago, Yi Shiwen had easily beheaded a Xiantian master, although at that time, Lu Ji's strength had not been that much, and his transformation of Xiantian Jin Qi was inferior compared to the current Zhen Qi transformation of Zhang Yang and Yi Feng. But Yi Shiwen was also only a Hotian realm warrior back then, and had still been able to behead a Xiantian master like Lu Ji. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had also received Xiantian Dan and Blood Yuan fruit, like Yi Feng and Zhang Yang, so it was easy to guess that he would definitely have entered into the Xiantian realm, and his previous tyrannical strength would have become even more tyrannical. Indeed, as they had thought in the last 2 months, Yi Shiwen's strength had progressed by leaps and bounds, and he had become tyrannically power, even though he was still at the Xiantian first stage. He had fully consolidated his inner state within the Xiantian realm at the first stage, and half of his Jin Qi had completely transformed into Xiantian Jin Qi. He had experienced breakthroughs in all of his Xiantian level martial arts techniques, where he had reached the peak of first layer of Tyrant Body Technique, which made his slim body to contain a total strength of 19 dragons. and now that he had reached the peak of transformation of 50% Jin Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi, he could even contend with the Xiantian third stage experts, and the most important thing was that the now ordinary warriors of the Xiantian third stage wouldn't be able to injure him. He had finally reached the peak of the Xiantian part of Celestial Step, and in just 2 months, his speed had nearly doubled compared to the speed he had while fighting the Firelin beast. Changing muscles, shrinking bones technique had been practiced to the Xiaoqing realm, and even while standing beside a Xiantian master, Yixuan could not be discovered and would even be able to change his appearance. He had achieved the best benefits in the Cold Moon Beheader, and had actually practiced the Full Moon Beheader to the Deshang realm. Only the progress was not much for Coiling Dragon Palm, which was such a difficult martial art to practice that Yixuan could only grasp a little more knowledge about its first move, Hidden Dragon, rising from the abyss. Now only the masters of the Xiantian third stage, who had transformed 60% of their Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi, could pose a threat to him. But with such advancements in his strength, the price naturally was very large. After entering into the Xiantian realm, the low-grade spirit stones consumption had increased dramatically, and almost all of the spirit stones he possessed had already been burnt in the last 2 months, and now low-grade spirit stone were simply not good enough for practicing Xiantian techniques, so he could only use spirit stones, which were quite expensive. In other words, Yixuan had once again become poor. NT. With this chapter, I conclude the grand release for Saturday, though it dragged on a bit, but you will still get 2 chapters, chapters 78 and 79, on Sunday, so enjoy, laughing face. NT. Also, I may release GSI Chapter 4 Sunday, depending on my schedule for MGS releases, but I cannot promise right now. Raised so far, $68, 227%. Queue cleared for Chapter 78. Chapter 79 will be a regular release for Sunday, along with sponsored Chapter 78. Chapter 78. NT. Thanks to Thomas Edwards, New Zealand, Samantha Weaver, New Zealand, and Jen Henrik, Dux, Germany, for sponsoring this chapter. Chapter 78. Like a dead dog, however, Yixuan was quite used to his special way of cultivation, and he needed to arrange for surplus spirit stones to continue practicing in the special space. After entering into the Xiantian realm, the crazy consumption rate of spirit stones had led to a rapid increase in his strength and speed, to a terrifying extent. People of Shaoyang Yuan School were also giving somewhat strange looks to Yixuan, because they did not know why disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School looked so overjoyed after the sudden appearance of this young man. "Who are you?" Huiqing asked. "Qingfeng Mountain Yuan Schools, Yixuan." Yixuan indifferently said, "Who wounded my brother?" "It was him, that Huiqing." "Yes, it was him." Many of the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School immediately said while pointing towards Huiqing, "So what if it was me?" Huiqing looked at Yixuan with disdain and said, "Are you the Yifeng's younger brother?" "That Yifeng is a guy with an undeserved reputation and mediocre strength. That's all he is." Huiqing said indifferently, "NT, with an undeserved reputation, idiom, unwarranted fame. You are just an ignorant dog who has actually dared to venture into our territory." Yixuan looked maliciously at Huiqing and said, At this time, the conflict between the 2 sub-schools had also attracted many onlookers, consisting mainly of disciples living on the neighboring mountain peaks. Both Qingfeng Mountain and Shaoyang Yuan schools were one of a dozen or more sub-schools, and the disciples from these sub-schools had settled on dozens of mountain peaks. Although more than a dozen mountain peaks were occupied by the disciples of these sub-schools. But for the entire Yuan school, this was still a small and insignificant area and nothing more. The key figures of Yuan school, the elders, the high-ranked disciples, and others, all of them had their own separate mountain peak as personal domain. It was difficult to imagine how big Yuan school actually was. "You actually dared to abuse me!" Huiqing shouted with an angry look on his face. "Abused? That was just the beginning, because now I will beat the crap out of you." Yixuan sneered, and in just a step, Using celestial step, he arrived in front of Huicheng in a flash. "Did you think you can just come here and run wildly and no one will punish you?" Yi Shiwen mercilessly shot his big hand towards the face of Huicheng. Until a moment ago, Huicheng had been feeling triumphed when he suddenly saw Yi Zaiwen's hand coming towards him. He wanted to dodge, but simply couldn't because Yi Zaiwen's speed was incredibly fast, almost like a whirlwind, and in an instant, Yi Zaiwen's hand had approached Huicheng's face. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's big hand slapped maliciously on the face of Huicheng. He suddenly screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood, and along with that, some of his teeth flew out. All the people present there had their jaws dropped. They knew about Huicheng's strength because being able to convert 20% of Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi was rare for masters at such a young age. However, this Yi Shiwen was simply too terrifying. His palm was so fast that Huicheng had been unable to dodge it and had suffered a severe slap on the face. Moreover, from the look on Yi Zaiwen's face, it seemed as if he hadn't put any effort at all. Shaoyang Yi Yuan School's disciples broke out in cold sweat, and Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School's disciples were cheering for Yi Shiwen because his strength really had become even more unfathomable and tyrannical. "You!" Huicheng looked at Yi Shiwen with a look of disbelief. "What you?" Yi Shiwen again slapped him on the other side of his face, and suddenly a few more teeth went flying out. There was a huge difference between their strengths. Although Huicheng could be considered as an outstanding genius in the crowd of this year's disciples, who had already transformed 20% of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. If he had faced someone else, then he would not be so miserable. But to his bad luck, he had dared to provoke Yi Shiwen. "I'll kill you!" Huicheng was extremely furious in his heart and mind, because from infancy to adulthood he had always been called a cultivation genius and had already gained fame at a young age by getting attention from everyone. But just now he had received such humiliation. Both of his eyes had reddened, and one could see hatred for Yi Shiwen in his eyes, who had humiliated him in front of such a large crowd, consisting of disciples from many sub-schools. When he had come to bully the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School, Huicheng never thought that he himself would be bullied instead. Huicheng drew out his sword blade, and it brandished a dazzling sword light that instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen with lightning speed. "NT!" Huicheng's weapon is a jianshin, which is a sword blade. Although Huicheng did not have the strength to hit back in front of tyrannical Yi Shiwen, and had been slapped twice that had made him face such a disgrace in front of everyone. But he was strong and was indeed a genius of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School, and at this time, the strength of a master of peak Xiantian first stage completely unleashed in the sword attack. Yi Shiwen sneered and used Rushing Thunder Hand to instantly grasp Huicheng's sword blade. Dang! A loud metal clashing sound resounded everywhere, and Yi Shiwen actually firmly grabbed Huicheng's sword blade in his hand. Bang dang! Bang dang! Bang dang! Yi Shiwen kneaded that sword blade as if it was made up of clay, and its size decreased section by section. After entering into the Xiantian realm and practicing tyrant body technique to such a profound level, not only his strength had increased dramatically, but the toughness of his body had also increased to such an extent that now it had become difficult for weapons like spears and swords to hurt him. Yi Shiwen kneaded the sword blade along with the sword key and directly snapped it. How is this possible? Huicheng simply couldn't believe his eyes when his sword blade snapped in the grip of Yi Zaiwen's hand. Yi Shiwen sneered, and without giving any chance to Huicheng, he rushed like an azure dragon rising out of the abyss and instantly trod on his chest. Bang! Huicheng couldn't respond, and his body was sent flying like a broken kite upside down, directly towards the several disciples of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School, with such a forceful impact that made them to fly out, and most of them fainted immediately. "Get the hell out of here!" With a cold look in his eyes, Yi Shiwen said, "You absolutely cannot barge into this place because it belongs to our Qingfeng Mountain Yi Yuan School. Keep that in mind." All of the disciples of Shaoyang Yi Yuan School were giving angry looks to Yi Shiwen, but did not dare to say anything. After all, a powerful Xiantian master like Hu Cheng had been beaten so easily, and they were not even in the Xiantian realm. So, how could they dare to say anything to a tyrannical Xiantian master like Yi Shiwen? Although they were at the peak of Hotian ninth stage, and Xiantian realm was only one step across. But the difference was like heaven and earth between the Hotian realm and Xiantian realm. At this time, the disciples of other Yi Yuan schools started talking about Yi Shiwen among themselves. Who is he? Why haven't I seen him before? Quite fierce. That Hu Cheng was definitely not weak, but he still couldn't hit back like a dead dog. NT, regular release of Chapter 79 in few hours. I would suggest those who live in a time zone where it's already night to go to bed because it may take time. Chapter 79. NT. This chapter is a regular release. Chapter 79. Father becomes the ancestor. I never thought that there was actually such a fierce man in Qingfeng Mountain Subschool. Right? Qingfeng Mountain Subschool is located in the remote areas of Great Yu State and rarely produces any powerful masters, but I never expected to see such an incredible master originating from there. Gee, it seems like things are going to be interesting because their genius has been defeated so easily, and Shaoyang Subschool won't easily forget about this. Yes, I heard that the Shaoyang Subschool also has a very strong genius, and his strength is close to the strengths of several seed disciples. What is that guy called again? He is called Wen Shiyang. Yes, that's it, Wen Shiyang. Except those few seeds disciples, he can be considered a very powerful master. Gee, I did not expect Qingfeng Mountain Subschool to have such a fierce character like him. He definitely didn't use his full strength against Hu Cheng, and I am sure that when the time comes, we will get to see his true strength. Seeing that people of Shaoyang Subschool had started to leave, Yi Shiwen did not stay there for too long and ran towards the inner courtyard. After entering the inner courtyard, he asked, "What the hell is going on? How did these bastards dare to bully our people?" Zhang Yang looked at Yi Shiwen with a baffled look in his eyes. Yi Shiwen had become even more powerful than the last time, and earlier, Zhang Yang had been able to see through his cultivation level, but now he absolutely couldn't see it at all. Although originally, Yi Shiwen always had a superior fighting strength and had also beheaded a Xiantian master, but at that time he was still in the Hotian realm and his cultivation was visible to others. But now that he had transformed half of his Jin Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi, his inner state had easily surpassed Zhang Yang, who had only transformed 10% of his Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. Although Yi Shiwen was still in the Xiantian first stage, but his fighting strength was comparable to a master of Xiantian third stage. All of this had occurred in a few months' time, and if he had not personally seen it, he probably would not have believed it. Few months ago, he had heard from Yi Feng about his young brother that he was just a master of Hotian third stage and was not even qualified to become a core disciple. But in these few months, he completely changed. But anyway, Yi Shiwen was also a disciple of Qingfeng Mountain Subschool, and the stronger he would be, the better for the reputation of their school. This is not the first time. We have been dealing with those guys from Shaoyang Subschool for days, and each time they come looking for a fight with new and ridiculous excuses. This time they wanted to occupy our place. That's really outrageous, Zhang Yang said in an angry tone. This was obviously a case of Shaoyang Subschool subterfuge, because this mountain peak was so big that it could accommodate even 500 disciples at once, so all they were trying to do was nothing more than finding a pretext to come and bully us. Before, I was not present here, and your elder brother had an argument with them, and they injured him. Zhang Yang explained. Them? There was someone else? Yi Shiwen asked. Yes, if it was only that Hu Cheng, then your brother with 20% transformed Xiantian Jin Qi was enough to handle him. Although Hu Cheng's 20% Xiantian Jin Qi transformation was superior to your brother, but he would still have been able to protect himself. The main reason behind his injuries was the strongest disciple of Shaoyang Subschool, called Wen Shiyang, who is already a master of Xiantian second stage. He was the one who seriously wounded your brother. I came back and saw that Huicheng was about to destroy your brother's cultivation and rescued your brother. By that time, when Shuyang had already left. Zhang Yang explained the matter to Yi Shiwen. What? Yi Shiwen did not know that they were going to destroy Yifeng's cultivation, otherwise he would not have showed mercy to Huicheng by only injuring him with a kick. He would never have allowed him to get away so easily. However, it was really amazing that Yifeng had not only entered into Xiantian realm, but he could transform 20% of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi in such a short time of 3 months. Excellent natural talent, but their school had issued a Xiantian pellet to them very late, unlike other sub-schools where they gave Xiantian pellets to train some geniuses, years before sending them to the main sect. When Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School had inquired, they found out that many disciples had already entered into the Xiantian realm in other sub-schools, and even without the resources, Yifeng had achieved the same feat by taking the same time for breaking through to the Xiantian realm. So, considering the natural talent of Yifeng, his breaking through to the Xiantian second stage was not surprising for Yi Shiwen. But anyway, under the tilt of the main sect and its abundant resources, the advantages of the using resources for cultivation in the last few years could be regarded as nothing. When Yi Shiwen heard that Yifeng had been wounded and had almost lost his cultivation, he suddenly became furious. In order to bully the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, they were willing to go as far as destroying someone's cultivation. This time, Shaoyang Sub-School had really crossed the line. Who is the elder sent for escorting our school's group to main sect? Where is he right now? Yi Shiwen asked because in general these sub-school disciples would not go alone to the main sect and the elders would accompany them inside the school. One reason was to protect them from any accident the way to main sect, and secondly also to protect them from getting bullied in the main sect. This was the world which followed the rule of might is right and strength was the only parameter that measured everything. And the other reason was that these sub-schools would exploit their connections with their disciples in the future. Although now they studied in the main sect, but human relations could be useful to a great extent, and when these disciples would become high-level experts or key figures in the main sect, they would then become the biggest backers for these sub-schools. This time, Ancestor Lin has come with us, Zhang Yang said. Ancestor Lin? Yi Shiwen asked in surprise. How could the ancestor personally escort them? Because it was never expected of an ancestor to personally escort the disciples to the main sect, as it was the job of an elder. I see. You left early, so you do not know. Ancestor Lin Zhantian has already retired, and the new ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School is your father. Zhang Yang said. What? Yi Shiwen was startled. So he only left for a few months, and such a big change took place in the school, where his father actually became the ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School. Although Yi Kongming was originally an elder, but the status of an elder or an ancestor could never be same. The status of the ancestors of sub-schools was comparable to that of the true disciples of the main sect, and his father had directly been promoted from the position of an elder to that of an ancestor. 1 month ago, Ancestor Lin resigned and has come to the main sect for debriefing. Zhang Yang explained. Where is the Ancestor Lin right now? Yi Shiwen asked. Raised so far, $38, 127%. Monday, Chapter 80 will come as a regular release along with sponsored Chapter 81. Tuesday, Chapter 82 will come as sponsored Chapter Q, cleared for sponsored Chapter 81, 100%. Q status for sponsored Chapter 82, 27%. Chapter 80. And T. This chapter is a regular release. Sponsored Chapter 81 will come in few hours. Chapter 80, dropping in to fight in the normal course of events. He ought to be here to protect them. But now, at such a critical time, they actually could not find him. If Lin Zhantian was here at that time, then all of this would never have happened and Yifeng would not have been seriously injured by them. About this, we do not know where the Ancestor Lin is right now. When Ancestor had just arrived, he was summoned, and not just him. Elders of other sub-schools were summoned as well. Zhang Yang said, although at this time the position of their sub-school's ancestor had been taken over by Yi Kongming. But since his childhood, Zhang Yang had been using the term ancestor to refer Lin Zhantian, and therefore suddenly changing his habit of calling him ancestor was somewhat difficult for him. Also, no one would go to tangle over such a trivial matter. It seems like something happened, and that's why they were called on a short notice. While talking to Zhang Yang, Yi Xuan entered the room and glimpsed at Yi Feng, who was lying on the bed. His complexion looked pale, and his breath was also intermittent, and Yi Ruxue was on his side, taking care of him at the moment. Yi Xuan had not seen Yi Ruxue for last 3 months, and right now he noticed that her breath was still firmly fixed on the peak Hotian 9th stage, and there seemed to be a thin line, and once she broke through this line, then she would be able to break through to the Xiantian realm. And with the help of Yi Zaiwen's Xiantian pellet that he had left for her, this was only a matter of time. According to Yi Zaiwen's judgment, Yi Rux's strength had already stayed at the peak of Hotian 9th stage for some time and had fully consolidated, and there was a high possibility that she might experience a breakthrough this month and enter into the Xiantian realm. Brother, sister. Yi Xuan strode inside. Little brother, you are back. Yi Feng noticed Yi Xuan coming inside and smiled, but he had suffered serious injuries, and suddenly his face twitched. Brother, you must avenge our elder brother that when Shuyang and Hu Cheng went simply too far. Yi Ruxue indignantly said. Yi Xuan also remembered that in his memories, when he was small and would often get bullied for being weak, both Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue would always come to his rescue, and therefore the bond among 3 siblings had always been extremely strong. Although there was no blood relation between Yi Xuan and the other 2, but the 3 of them were more intimate than blood-related brothers and sisters. Junior sister Yi, since you were inside the room, you missed the fight where brother Yi directly humiliated Hu Cheng in front of everyone and tidied him up like a dead dog. At this time, Wu Hao answered for Yi Xuan. Really? Yi Ruxue said with a surprised look on her face, but she was also worried for her younger brother. Now, Yi Xuan had been recognized by everyone as Qingfeng Mountain Subschool's strongest disciple, and Yi Feng was the second. If they could come to beat Yi Feng, then Yi Xuan would naturally be their next target. But according to Wu Hao's statement, Hu Cheng had been defeated effortlessly by Yi Xuan, and while Wu Hao was explaining things in detail, Yi Feng saw an indifferent look on Yi Zaiwen's face that made him resemble a person tired of war. It was not that he doubted Yi Zaiwen's strength, but thought that it was too inconceivable that Yi Xuan had so easily tidied up that Hu Cheng. If what Brother Wu said is right, then, little brother, you have already vented my anger. Yi Feng grinned and said, Vent, it's still too early. Yi Xuan coldly said, How can you possibly consider this matter as finished? Yi Xuan's words were filled with killing intent. Originally, Yi Xuan had counted on the elder who had come with the group to the main sect, but it seemed that he couldn't count on that at the moment. But when he heard that the elder of the Shaoyang subschools had also gone for the summons, he immediately had an idea that rather than asking someone else for help, he might as well just ask himself. Today, things might have gone worse if he had not arrived at a critical moment, and when Yi Xuan watched Yi Feng lying on the bed, finding it difficult to move, he was even more infuriated. How could he possibly let them off? People of Shaoyang Subschool were waiting for a chance when their elder was not present. Otherwise, if he was present, then their plan to bully Qingfeng Mountain Subschool would most likely have failed, because their elder, sent to the main sect along with these elite disciples, was also an incredible master and could easily deal with the Xiantian level disciples as well. And today, when all of the elders had been summoned, the people of Shaoyang Subschool immediately came to bully the people of Qingfeng Mountain. They had obviously not come for taking over the courtyard, and it was purely an excuse to provoke the disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Subschool and nothing more. Yi Xuan pulled out a bottle of medicinal pellets from a storage ring. There were many bottles of medicinal pills inside the storage ring that he had got from the Xiantian master, Luo Tian, and these medicinal pills were good for injuries. Although Yi Xuan had consumed most of the medicinal pills, but there were still some that he had saved for emergencies. After a dose of medicinal pills, Yi Feng's face immediately changed for better, and he seemed to get better. A warrior's body itself was very strong. Not to mention, these medicinal pills belonged to a Xiantian master, Luo Tian. Yi Shiwen estimated that Yi Feng would be able to recover in 2 or 3 days and should be able to perform at full strength in the entrance examination hour. When Yi Shiwen saw that the condition of Yi Feng had considerably improved after consuming the pills, he gave out a sigh of relief and said, "Brother, you just wait and see how I take revenge for you and vent your anger. Today, these Xiaoyang bastards dared to come and bully us, and if I do not teach them a lesson, then won't that ruin our Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School's reputation? And everyone would think of us as people from a weak sub-school." Yi Shiwen words were deep and meant that only strong people commanded respect in this world, and weak were regarded as fools. Competition was present everywhere, and it was especially very fierce among the sub-schools. Only a powerful person could command respect, and if Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School didn't respond to the provocation of Xiaoyang Sub-School, then it would definitely be regarded as a weak sub-school. So, if someone tried to punch, it was necessary to punch back even harder to prove one's strength in this world. Teaching Xiaoyang Sub-School a lesson now was in the best interests of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School. But this was just a secondary reason, and injuries of Yi Feng were the main reason why Yi Shiwen was so fixated on punishing those bullies of Xiaoyang Sub-School. Yi Shiwen ascertained the location of Xiaoyang Sub-School's courtyard and immediately went out, followed by many disciples of Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School. Xiaoyang Sub-School's courtyard was located not far from the Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School's courtyard, and only after a while Yi Shiwen was standing in front of Xiaoyang Sub-School. Yi Shiwen stepped forward and shouted, "Wen Shiyang, get your ass over here!" Yi Zaiwen's voice spread out along with a terrifying Jin Qi throughout the courtyard, causing many nearby Xiaoyang disciples to rush over to take a look at what was happening. "Who are you? How dare you to be so provocative and unruly in front of our Xiaoyang Sub-School residents?" A young disciple came out and said, "Get lost." Yi Shiwen indifferently said, "You bastard, I will kill you." The young disciple suddenly rushed furiously towards Yi Shiwen, and his Quan Jin twisted and blasted out of his fists, and went towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Zaiwen's big hand stretched out, and it seemed as if the Lingqi had condensed around his hand to form an iron wall. Yi Shiwen fiercely struck his hand into that disciple's body. Bang! The disciple directly flew out while spouting blood from his mouth and fainted instantly. This loud sound immediately attracted the attention of many disciples in the courtyard of Xiaoyang Sub-School, and only after a moment, dozens of disciples had arrived and completely surrounded Yi Shiwen. Release of sponsored Chapter 81 may get delayed, so I would recommend those who live in the time zones where it's already late to not wait and go to bed slightly smiling face. Chapter 82 will come as a sponsored release on Tuesday. Raised so far, $38, 127%. Q is cleared for Chapter 81, 100%. Q status for Chapter 82, 27%. Chapter 81. NT. Thanks to Jan Henrik, Dux, Germany, for sponsoring this chapter, Chapter 81. When Shiyang comes out only after a moment, dozens of disciples from Xiaoyang Sub-School had arrived and completely surrounded Yi Shiwen. "Who are you? How dare you come to our Xiaoyang Sub-School and act so unruly?" Many of the disciples from Xiaoyang Sub-School were angry, but among them were present some of those disciples who were part of Hua Cheng's group and had gone to bully the disciples of the Qingfeng Mountain. They immediately recognized Yi Shiwen and were suddenly frightened because they could vividly remember that scene where Yi Shiwen had bedeviled a Xiantian master like Hua Cheng, who was also one of the top genius disciples from their sub-school. "Go tell Wen Shiyang to come out right now." Yi Shiwen shouted. These disciples from Xiaoyang Sub-School had tried to take advantage of absence of the elders to thoroughly discredit Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School and destroy its reputation. So all Yi Shiwen was trying to do was return the favor by doing the exact same thing. in the exact same pattern to Shaoyang Sub-School and intended to thoroughly defeat and crush their strongest disciple in front of everyone. Huo Cheng's reputation was not big enough, so defeating him didn't solve the purpose of tit for tat. So Yi Xuan had personally come to play with Shaoyang Sub-School's strongest disciple. "Who are you? How dare you call brother one's name in such a disrespectful manner?" At this time a young disciple, who appeared to be in his 20s, came out of the courtyard and looked firmly at Yi Xuan. A mere man from Qingfeng Mountain Sub-School, daring to act wildly in front of our Shaoyang Sub-School. You are really courting death. The young man sneered, and within few steps he had already arrived in front of Yi Xuan with an extremely fast speed. And at this moment, the imposing aura of a Xiantian master instantly released from his body and spread out. Yi Xuan immediately knew who this man actually was. He was named Su Liang and was one of the top 3 Xiantian disciples of the Shaoyang Sub-School. Since Yi Xuan had already met Hui Cheng and defeated him, and when this man came out he referred Wen Shiyang as Brother Wen, so he was not Wen Shiyang as well, and could only be the 3rd Xiantian master of the Shaoyang Sub-School, Su Liang. Su Liang's strength was very high, almost not under Hui Cheng's strength, which proved the fact that this year's batch of top disciples from Shaoyang Sub-School was indeed very powerful, and no wonder they had dared to bully a rival sub-school. However, after transforming 50% of his Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi, the strength of Yi Xuan was now comparable to that of ordinary Xiantian 3rd stage masters. Also, his own cultivation was at the peak of Xiantian 1st stage, so how could Su Liang be his match? NT? Ordinary Xiantian 3rd stage masters are those who have only transformed 50% of their Jin Qi into Xiantian Jin Qi. Yi Xuan raised his hand to block the incoming attack, and with a bang, a loud sound of air explosion resounded everywhere. Su Liang's offensive attack had been staggered right in front of Yi Xuan, as if Su Liang had collided into a huge iron wall, setting off a terrifying blast that swept across. During the fight between Xiantian masters, almost each of their punches could easily burst into air explosions, causing the air to vibrate and shake violently, just like how the ripples dance violently on the surface of a lake, fluctuating and distorting its original calmness. Su Liang's eyes widened with a flash of surprise clearly visible in his eyes. He obviously did not expect Yi Xuan to be able to easily block his blow, though his attack just now seemed hasty. But he knew in his heart that before coming out of the courtyard gate, he had already started to prepare a sudden surprise attack on Yi Xuan. But he never thought that his planned-out offensive attack would be useless against Yi Xuan, who was just standing there with his one hand on his front side, like an impenetrable iron wall. "My turn!" Yi Xuan sneered and threw out a lightning-fast kick towards Su Liang, accompanied by a burst of crackling air explosions. Yi Zaiwen's kick was so fast that it was blowing the sound of a whistle in the air, as it was going straight for Su Liang. Su Liang was well prepared and immediately leaped up to avoid Yi Zaiwen's kick. But without any stagnation, Yi Xuan did not even give him any time to gasp for breath, and immediately slapped out his palm, rushing thunder hand, pass like thunder, and move like the wind. For a time, Yi Zaiwen's attack looked similar to the ninth heaven's thunder. Bang! Su Liang lifted his hand to block, but immediately a sudden burst of cracking sound resounded in the surrounding. The bones inside Su Liang's arms had been broken under the direct impact of Yi Zaiwen's palm attack, which possessed the strength of 19 dragons, which was quite terrifying because Su Liang had only reached the strength of 2 dragons and could never rival Yi Zaiwen's tyrannical strength. Yi Xuan had not even put any effort and had just shot his palm, but even this was more than enough to instantly crush both arms of Su Liang. The sound of breaking bones had suddenly scared the crowd of Shaoyang disciples. "Ah!" Su Liang screamed again and again, although a few of them had already seen the one-sided beating of Hui Cheng at the hands of Yi Xuan, and knew that he was very powerful. But they did not expect that Su Liang would be so drastically injured by a single attack from Yi Xuan. Su Liang could not even stop a single move from Yi Xuan. It was too fast to notice, But Yi Zaiwen's palm attack also had an essence of Missing Moon Beheader present in it. He had already practiced Missing Moon Beheader to the Deshang realm and had come in handy. Instead of using his long blade, he had used his fingertips to perform the skill of Missing Moon Beheader. He had also integrated the essence of this skill inside his body, which had now become almost incomparably tough, like the reinforced iron itself. Even without using his blade, though losing a bit of its true power and range of attack, this attack was still tyrannically powerful and effective, having the skill of Missing Moon Beheader and along with the essence of his rushing thunder hand. His palm attack had become faster, stronger, and terrifyingly heavy. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's palm rumbled and shot into the chest of Su Liang, breaking his breastbone immediately. Yi Shiwen had tried his best to control the power in this palm attack otherwise, if left unconstrained, this attack would have instantly killed Su Liang. But even after restraining his strength, Yi Zaiwen's attack contained such a terrifying force that it had directly sent Su Liang flying into the crowd of Shaoyang disciples, and the impact made him unconscious immediately. Silence! There was a pin-drop silence on the scene. When the spectating disciples of many sub-schools saw the instant defeat of Su Liang at the hands of Yi Shiwen, all of them immediately gasped. Immediately afterwards, a buzzing sound of discussions instantly filled the surrounding area. How is this possible? Su Liang was so easily defeated at the hands of this man. That palm attack was definitely an astonishing ability. This man is so powerful, I'm afraid he can easily compete with Wen Shiyang. And like always, these Xiantian masters will become stepping stones for someone else like that Hui Cheng and Su Liang, although both of them are quite famous and would have become even more famous in the future. But now, they have become a stepping stone for this man. It has always been this way. These geniuses contend with each other, and only the invincible ones walk the bloody path to success. I'll wait to become powerful enough to be able to walk on the same path. After this battle, regardless of the outcome, the name of this person will spread throughout the main sect, and I'm afraid that before long, a lot of people will come to challenge him. After defeating Su Liang, Yi Shiwen stepped forward and shouted, "Wen Shiyang, come out if you're truly a man!" "Who are you? State your name." This time, a purple-robed young man, with a dignified look on his face, came out of the courtyard. "You're Wen Shiyang." Yi Shiwen glanced at him and said, "Who are you?" Wen Shiyang looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Qingfeng Mountain Sub-Schools, Yi Shiwen." Yi Shiwen indifferently said, "Are you the one who wounded my brother? So you are Yi Feng's little brother. You dared to come here and actually caused ruckus and trouble for everyone. You are quite courageous, aren't you? But you should have thought before offending the school regulations." Wen Shiyang said, "Tuesday, Chapter 82 will come as a sponsored release. Raised so far, $18, 60%. Q status for Chapter 82, 60%.